All right, this is session zero, number one for my Ravnica campaign. Say hi, JD.
Oh, hello.
Yes, yes. Anyways, I'm gonna go through and do everyone's session zero, and then so everyone will be ready by session one, and all in the same place. So we're gonna start off with JD's character, who is
It is Raven Nightblade. She is
hi.
a high elf,
Yep,
and she is a rather effective assassin.
yep. If you say the name again, you kind of went right out as you went to say the first name.
Maislin
There we go.
Night.
Maislin Nightblade. All right. So I'm not going to read the backstory out here. I'll probably do so on something else. But alright, so you set out on your adventure as a low level assassin thief. So, of course, I'm going to say along your way towards Waterdeep, you get into a few encounters, you help some people here and there for some money, of course. You are a trained thief assassin. A few small things, nothing major. When you get to Waterdeep, you join a small campaign group, and as you campaign, you spend your downtime researching your parents. And by the time you hit about, I would say level five, you've ran a couple campaigns. You've you know gone taking care of some orcs and bandits. You discover that your parents worked with the shadow thieves, and that you also discover that your foster father also used to work with the shadow thieves, and it was something that he never brought up with you. And you write to him about it, and he says something along the lines of, "Why would I want to tell you about me being a criminal or something like that?" And then you go back on questing. You discover a little bit more throughout the next, I guess you say another about a year, but you get about to level six, and you finally discover that they were not just killed by people who mistook them for their target. They were actually hired assassins to kill them due to your father bailing on a questionable quest and the Drow relatives wanting vengeance and having to kill him. And you also come up with the unfortunate ability that your foster parents knew about it and didn't stop it or warn them, or tried to at least. Well, actually, no. From where she would learn, she wouldn't learn that. So you go to confront him. It's a very emotional moment. You'll, he explains everything that happened. He gives you the "I love you," but you got anger in your eyes, so you don't give him the good old send off. You just kind of storm out, and you go and off on your own, away from your party, to track down this drow. And you manage to track him down, along with the assassins. And this is where I'll actually let you take control of your character a little bit, but you know that all the assassins and that drow happen to be of the same little coven, or assassin party, and you slowly slink into the house while most of them are asleep in their little underdark home. And I'm assuming your character would want to take them out one by one, and a little bit more, not because instead of following under father's footsteps, take it out painlessly. You use a little bit more of a painful poison. Sound good so far, JD? You like when I'm going?
Like where you going with it?
Okay, good.
Um,
So I'm
yeah,
ha-
I think she would. I think she would want to be strategic about it, right? So if she finds on the lower level assassins people who um, you know she wants to take them all out, but I think with the ones that are more of hired hands, she'll offer them quickly, like a quick slit of the throat
Yeah.
while they're in bed sleeping.
But she'll have
She's
the
gonna,
faces and names of the ones she knows for a fact were there and killed their parents.
correct. And for those, I think what she's going to do
She'd
is
use a mix of poisons for what I have for you. A mix of a paralysis potion so they can't move or scream, and a slowly burning painful potion. So they'll be nice and awake while they slowly painful to death.
yes.
When she goes to each one of them, like you said, she systematically takes out just the hired help. The ones she's actually here for, she takes her time with.
Yes.
She eventually makes it up the building from the lower ring, and actually no, it makes it down. I'm gonna say she entered from the top. When she gets to the basement, she finds the guy who orchestrated everything. The guy who hired the assassins, and he coincidentally seems to be working in what looks like a chemistry lab. And from your expertise with poisons, you notice that just about every bottle on the shelf is filled with a different type of poison. And pretty much a poisoner's dream basement. So, I'm gonna let you. How do you want to take him out? He doesn't notice you yet. He's still working diligently at his poisons.
It's up to him.
Alright. Have lo-fi beats to this brutal massacre that's gonna go down.
So I would want health up to him. I
Alright.
would immediately try to grapple him and basically like lock him up.
Gotcha. So, I mean, obviously there's gonna be a little bit of restraint with the grapple. I'm gonna say during the struggle you don't notice that some of the chemistry set gets pushed over, but you do successfully eventually get him in a nice lockup.
Okay. If there's a chair around, and I'm gonna get him into the chair.
Alright.
I'm gonna tie him off to the chair.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna first, before I kill him, I'm gonna give him the truth serum because
Gotcha.
I want to find out exactly what happened and why.
Alright. So after you regurgitate the truth serum, you get administer it to him. He gives you, reluctantly at first, of course, with the little help of your poison, I'm assuming. He spills the beans that he felt that if your father had been there, his family member, who at this point I could say that even for a drow he really cared for him, would have still been alive, and he blames you and your family, and he didn't know that you had survived, otherwise he'd have had you slaughtered as well. And it actually says that he would have had you slaughtered in front of him first if he was there personally. He spits at you because he doesn't like you. I can't hear you right now if you're talking, so.
So I grab him
Yeah.
and I cut out his tongue.
Alright, that
He can't speak anymore.
sounds good. Do you
And
leave?
then I don't leave him. And then I eventually I take my I take I take two small daggers because I would have grabbed an extra one knowing that I was going after this. I take two small daggers and jam them right into his top legs.
Right to the top of his legs?
Yeah, right above his kneecap, but right
Ooh.
into his legs. And then when I jab them in, I take my rapier out. I slowly start carving little slits in.
I'm gonna have right after you stab the legs in, he gives himself a last ditch effort with most of his strength. And since he's bleeding profusely from his mouth, not having a tongue, he barrels into you, knocking you into more of the chemistry set. After at this point, you haven't noticed anything, but more glass falls. But you're still so fucking angry. You continue with the rapier after you set him back up.
And I slowly start carving into him, and I leave these like large gashes in like his head and neck, but not enough to kill him, just large gashes in his head and neck. And then I go over to his poisoners, like his little poison shelf, and I try to see what he's got because I want to give him something that's gonna really make it hurt.
Huh. He just so happens to have a combination of. I'm gonna go ahead and just give this random fucking spider poison that you've heard about that's supposed to like be really effective on people with innate magical abilities because it just like it like kind of lights them on fire from the inside through their own mana. Some weird ass magical spider that I'm just gonna randomly make up that will fit this scenario just fine. And that's what he was working with, trying to purify it.
Like, so I'm gonna take some of that. I'm gonna take some of that shit,
Because if you don't
and
know, most drow innately have magic. So
correct. So I'm gonna take some of that shit. And me being an elf, I would know that. So I'm gonna take some of that shit and I'm gonna walk over to him. I'm gonna grab his mouth, open it up, and I'm just gonna say, "Bottoms up, asshole!" Dump it right down his throat.
yeah, and then he's gonna again while he's screaming or well what was screaming agony. While you still had him grabbed, he's gonna headbutt you in the nose. And he's gonna then convulse on the floor for a few minutes as you see like these dark blue, kind of violet purple lines, like where his veins would be, as the magic inside of him is like consumed by the poison, burning him alive.
And
At this, yeah,
when he headbutted me, am I bleeding at all?
yes, you're bleeding from the nose.
All right. So I'm just gonna stand there, and I'm gonna stand up, and as he's convulsing, I'm just gonna stare at him on the floor like Michael Myers style, and just kind of cock my head and watch him. And I'm just gonna like, as the blood comes down, I'm just gonna lick it and just like, just taste it, absorb it, because that's
Yeah,
gonna be my like, taste of victory.
it's about this time you smell the smoke.
Yeah. So I'm
You're
gonna
gonna
turn
look
around.
around, and you're gonna
Yeah.
see the fires quickly going out of control, and it
All right.
just
I'm
reached the it has just reached the poison rack, and the
all right,
first vial explodes. And I would say make a con save, but because we're kind of in D&D mode, you get hit with shrapnel, and unfortunately, the first vial that hits you is a paralysis potion. So you're gonna fall to the ground as more and more of these start exploding and the room gets filled with poisons. You start getting racked from different poisons and toxins. It's terrible. At this point, your health would probably be like 75% down. It gets worse and worse. You're like, you get to a point where you're almost screaming for it to stop. But of course, you're paralyzed. You can't. The next thing you feel is a new pain. It feels like you're being electrocuted, like someone has zapped you. The last thing you feel before blacking out is moving very, very fast. And large mushrooms. You don't know why, large mushrooms. And then you black out. The next thing you know, you're awake. You wake in a bed. Well, in what looks like a how to describe a healer's room. What's going on? You can take it away now. Now it's back and forth.
Can I move?
Yeah, you can move. Weirdly, you
All right.
don't seem to be anywhere near where you were before. Yes, I'll hold you, dog. I'm sorry, the dog has interrupted me talking because he keeps jumping up on me. So yeah, you can move. Would you like to get up?
Slowly. I'm gonna be extra cautious.
You feel woozy, nauseous, but you're not sure why you're even still alive, or who saved you for that matter. Um, you look around and there's some odd fungi and potions. You can see a few of them are tonics, a few of them look to be healing potions. Some of these potions and fungi, plants, because you know you're a poisoner, you know a few thing or two you've never seen before. These are odd, and you've been seeing a lot of plants. You seem to be on. The room seems to be, there's two other beds in the room. There's a window that's barred shut, and there's a door that is also shut. And of course, like, it's a herbalist room, so there's a desk, there's a chair there, and then more potions where someone was working, a pestle and mortar, things like that, you know. Something you would find in a herbalist room. Oh, unfortunately, you have none of your gear. You're pretty much in, uh, kind of like, I guess you could say common clothes, but these clothes are unique into the fact that they seem to be made mostly out of plant fibers.
Um,
Now that you're standing up and looking around.
I can,
And you're kind of going in and out again, so you want to have to.
so Maitland would be looking around. I'd look around to see if I could find something that I could use as a weapon.
Aside from maybe
Okay.
using some of these various potions you have nothing of, or maybe, breaking off a piece of the bedpost. You can't really find anything that you could be used as a weapon at this current moment. Could bash someone over the head with a pestle or mortar or a chair. You're gone out again.
All right. No, I don't know why it's going out in and out like that. No metal utensils or anything that I can see.
I mean, there might be like a flat, like a butter knife kind of almost in terms of
Well,
dullness.
I'll grab that just in case, because I know I could probably force it right into somebody if I had to. But like, if it was in a pinch, I would look around to see if I could see any poisons or anything like that.
Like I said,
Something.
aside from the ones that you're pretty confident are used for healing and some tonics or maybe some ailments, there are various fauna and mushrooms that you have never seen before. You have no idea what they do, but you could grab a few of those if you want.
No, if I don't know what they are, I probably wouldn't, just because I wouldn't want to. Um, get, I wouldn't want to get poisoned myself if I touch them.
Oh, there is one other thing of note I forgot to mention. There are two dead rats in the corner, along with a pile of cheese sitting there where it looked like a couple of bites had been taken out of it from the rats. So the cheese is probably poisonous, you guessed from that little display.
I would take the cheese, see if I could find something that I could put inside some sort of vial that I
Well,
could put it in.
there's a bunch of vials and little cups you can throw it in. So yeah, you have cheese in in a cup.
Yeah, a little cheese in a cup. And then I would, if I have any pockets, I would put that in the pocket because I don't want,
Yeah.
if I meet somebody, I don't want them to know that I have
Yeah.
it.
They took your
Um,
stuff, but fortunately they gave you pockets. You have a pocket.
I'll put that in the pocket along with the butter knife in the other pocket. Um, and I will immediately start. Now, you said there's a door?
There's a door, and there's also a barred window. And then by barred, I mean it's shut, and you can see what looks like bars from what little bit of window there's actually there that are holding it from the outside.
Can I see anything outside?
Um, Peering through what little thing you can see, you know that it's very dark down where you are. Not being a being with natural, well, I mean, you have, you know, dark vision. Um, you do notice some grass and a few other, and like looks like maybe another building. But the glass is stained, and you're like, why would someone use stained glass somewhere where it looks like you're underground still? And you're like, why would someone have stained grass underground?
Would I-
Sorry, you went out again.
No, I was saying, I wasn't really saying, I was saying interesting.
Yes.
Um, All right, so I will go over and try the door.
So you're messing with the door, and the door's locked. And do you want to attempt to listen through the door?
Yes.
You're listening through the door, and for the first few minutes, you're not quite hearing anything. But then you hear singing. It's like someone down there, sound downstairs. You assume downstairs, because it sounds like it's coming from below you. They're going like la 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 la.
All right. Will go down. You said it was locked, right?
This
So
is a lot.
I will knock on the door.
You knock on the door. The singing stops, and then she's like, and then you hear singing resumes after a few seconds, and then you hear the clanking of dishes, and then you hear footsteps coming up towards the door. I can't hear you if you're saying what you're doing.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything. I was just I'm writing all this down.
All right.
Okay, so as soon as I hear the footsteps, I'll immediately take a step back and just prep. But I'm not going to be aggressive because I don't know what's going on. But obviously they healed me. I'm surprised I'm alive. So I'm not going to take an aggressive stance, but I'm going to be ready just in case.
All right. So they finally get to the door. Stop, 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 stop. And the door handle jimmies for a second, and you can see the little lock that you couldn't turn because it's one of those ones where you can like look and see it, but you can't quite to mess with it. There's the key, basically locked from the other side. But when someone turns the key, the handle noticeably changes. Like turns to the side basically. So you see it unlock, and the door opens, and the first thing you notice would be the tray they're carrying. It seems to have a cup of water, or like what could be a cup of water, and like a plate of food. But as you look up, you're slightly unsure of yourself as the person standing before you has a green skinted tin color and very bright green eyes. And where they would have hair, they have tendrils. And she's like, "Hello, sleepyhead." She's wearing an overcoat with a light skirt underneath, leggings, and knee-high boots. Her hands also seem to be slightly scaled and clawed instead of normal hands. Are you there?
Yep, I'm right here. So I'm going to say, excuse me, but I hate to bother you. Where am I?
Oh, why, you're down with the Golgari, dear. And then, she's gonna say, "I found you when I was out gathering supplies. There was a flash of light, and I turned to my right, and you were there. Huh, you gave me a fright." And she walks in and walks over to the little table and puts the tray of food down. She's like, "You've been asleep for 5 days. You must be tired and hungry." Say what?
I am quite hungry. But I'm still awfully curious about how I ended up here.
Well, that I'm not too sure of. Um,
Do you know where my things are?
your things? Why, yes. I have them downstairs in a chest. Let me keep them safe in case you know, were to wake up. But, strangely enough, you were heavily poisoned when I found you.
Ah, yes. I had a bit of an incident in a lab.
Ah, hey. At least you didn't get one of those spores on you. We have a mushroom down here that if you get it, that's it.
Yes, could you actually lower the music a little bit?
Oh, sorry. You could turn the music bot down yourself, but
I tried and it's not working.
Ah, okay. Well, I'll stop the music. I didn't know it was that loud. Let's see, pause. Okay, it's not letting me pause it. All right, just let's switch channels then. 'Cause it's not letting me pause it. There we go. That
Yeah.
way, if the music was bothering you that bad, that's fine. But
Oh,
yeah,
it's just,
yeah, she's looking at you and she's like, I might know what type of teleportation that was, but I'd have to ask my friend about that.
and what, if you don't mind, is the Golgari you said?
Oh, see, that just adds more to what I think I know, what I think it is. But I'd have to ask my friend for sure. But if you don't know about the Golgari Swarm, you must definitely not be from around Ravnica.
Ravna who?
Ravnica, city of guilds. Well, it's the biggest city structure on the planet.
I, I've only. I'm not familiar with Ravnica. I mean, it's near Waterdeep.
Hmm? Never heard of Waterdeep?
I've heard of Waterdeep. I mean, it's
Only the biggest
interesting.
city structure on your planet?
Um, am I dead?
Ha! No, but I don't know why you're alive. You were filled with enough poisons to kill. Whew, man, maybe even a worm. And
Re-
and then she says, in fact, your body. Last time I checked, which was last night, your body still got poison in it. Dad, I took a little bit of your saliva and put it on that. Did you take the cheese?
Um, I did only because I was quite hungry and I was going to keep it for later. But I'm glad you
Well,
told me that it's poison. And
well,
I
well.
pulled.
About that, the poison came from your mouth, as in your normal saliva. You killed 2 rats with just your saliva.
Shit. Okay. All right.
And
Um.
and yes, like I said, the last night you still had enough poison in you to kill a few things. And the fact that you're awake now is not only interesting and makes me want to keep you here, but it's not something I'm going to do. I think I've got to take you to my friend. He should know more about. If my hunch is correct, both of us will be in for a surprise. But but that's later. My name's Eileen, by the way.
Eileen.
I'm the
Um.
local Gorgon healer.
It's it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yep, yep. Here,
Um.
here. She pulls a chair out. You eat, sit.
So she's gonna sit and very cautiously eat, but then she's just gonna like just start once she takes the first couple bites and she realizes that it's not poison, she's gonna like mow it.
That's when she leans over and says, "My hunch was correct.
What was that?
That if I fed you something less poisonous than your saliva, it wouldn't hurt you at all. That mushroom you're eating is rather poisonous."
Oh, good. And I slowly like spit it out.
Don't worry. If you can chew on it, you can eat it.
Interesting. I would rather purge myself of poison rather than
Oh
ingest
no,
more
don't
of it.
worry. If it had actually hurt you, I'd have just given you an antidote. I haven't put any of it.
She still kind of pushes the mushroom off to the side. She's just not. She's like, nah, I'm good. But she eats the rest of the food.
No, it's fine. She remarks that it would have been just fine. I mean, where's the best place for you to get poisoned is in a healer's hut.
And she's just kind of gonna look around as she's like stuffing her face. So where am I?
Well, I said again, you're in the Golgari. It's a vast underground structure that lies under the city of Ravnica itself. we're kind of like the farmers slash. Well, we take care of all the refuse, the decay and the rots. We use it to grow food. It makes good fertilizer. Um, the place is also dangerous, filled with zombies, fungal growths, trolls, you name it. Well, the trolls are mostly nice. It's just the ones that have gone mad with, well, some of those mushrooms that I told you that, well, you get them once, you're pretty much done for.
As she's chewing, she's kind of looking out the
There's
window
also
when
the
she.
Kroll. They're down here. There's some bug-like people.
I'm sorry. What's the crow?
The Kroll. Well, they vary in sizes, but the normal one tends to be a humanoid with about 4 arms, and of course they have mandibles for, they're bug people. They're pretty nice most of the time. They're a little bit weird to get along with, though. They have different values than most other humanoids.
Right now, Maislin's trying to comprehend what the hell is going on and where the hell she is.
Oh, while y'all are talking, you hear a loud rumbling outside. Doof, doof. It's enough to shake everything, and she just seems undeterred by it.
What the hell is that?
Oh, that's probably the Lotleth's Goliath. They use it to haul stuff from back and forth from the farm. It's just a big zombie. Don't worry about it. It can't hurt you. Well, as long as it's under control, the Lotleth.
Did you say it's a giant zombie?
Yes, it was a giant that died long ago. They found him in pristine condition and thought that it would be better used to put him to work in the farm. He hauls the stuff that's much too heavy for most people to carry.
And Maislin's just kind of looking around like, where the hell am I? How's the food taste?
Uh, it's different. You don't notice a lot of the things there. Um, even the meat is weird. But the one you're eating is a poultry. You're sure that much. It's a little. It seems to taste a little more flavorful than chicken, but it's a little more salty as well.
Does it taste good?
No, it tastes pretty good. She seems to make good food.
All right, so Maislin's gonna just be chowing down. Still a little cautious looking, but she's gonna be so hungry and famished that she's gonna be eating quite heavily, skipping the mushrooms but eating the rest. Um,
Only that one mushroom was poisonous. I didn't poison you anymore. Like I said, you killed 2 rats. I was just curious.
that's fair. Do you have any notion on how to get the rest of the poison out?
No, not that I noticed. Well, I mean, I would assume that. Oh, I did give you quite a few antidotes, but like I said, the poison still appears to be in your system. It's weird. It's like your whole body is poisonous. You're weird, and I could turn people to stone.
You can turn people to stone.
Yes, I'm a gorgon. Oh, don't tell me you're one of those ones that believes all it takes is a look. We have to actually focus to do that.
I apologize, but I don't really know what a gorgon is.
Oh, dang, you're really not from here. My friend's gonna have a field day with you.
I'm sorry, who's your friend?
My friend? Oh, he works near the city center for the Golgari. Uh, if my hunch is correct, well, dare I say, you might be a planeswalker.
Planeswalker. I'm afraid I'm actually going to need a dictionary to understand everything that you're talking about
See,
because
that's
I
the
don't.
problem. I don't quite know exactly what a planeswalker can do. I do know that the leader of the Golgari, Vraska, is a planeswalker. She's also a Gorgon, too. She's such a great idol to look up to.
Right. Okay.
My friend
So
knows more about that because, well, after the war that recently happened here on Ravnica, uh, an evil planeswalker came through with a horde of undead, and well, the guilds banded together with a few helps from the good planeswalkers, pushed him away. But it's been a few years since then. They've introduced some new laws, and one of the laws is when you find a planeswalker, they need to be brought in so that they can be put into the system. My friend works with people that put planeswalkers into the system, catalogs where they're from, and gives them a temporary citizen's pass while they're here, so that they don't really get questioned for walking around.
Sounds fair, I guess. Um, could I have my things, please?
Yes, with you're done eating, we can go ahead and head towards my friend's house.
Yes. This was quite good. Thank you. Minus the poisonous mushrooms, but very good. Yes, if you could show me where my things are, and then we can see to your friend's house. That
All
would
right.
be.
And then she says, she gets up and leaves. She says, right this way. And she walks down the stairs.
And Maislin follows with her, and but before she leaves the room, she takes realizing that this Eileen is not too much of a threat for her at all. She takes the kind of butter knife and like very stealthily just kind of puts it onto the table before she leaves the room.
All right.
And
Follow her.
and the cheese. She drops the cheese in the butter knife.
All right. So you're gonna follow her down the stairs.
Follow her down.
As you're going down the stairs, you'll just notice that on the walls are pictures you assume is Eileen's family. And as you get down to the bottom, you notice that it seems to be somewhat of like a storefront for
Are they pictures or paintings?
There are. Well, it's hard to display. They are the finest paintings you've ever seen. One looks like the splitting image of her, but they were indeed made with paint. But
Okay.
I mean, they were. I'm talking like if you held up the painting to her, it looks just like her.
Interesting.
The dog has licked every inch of my foot. I'm
Is
sorry.
it? Oh, that's quite all right. Is it a quaint house?
Yeah, it looks like a little homely house. And then as you head down the stairs, it's well lit. The lantern hanging. Well, I didn't know to tell you this before, but earlier what was lighting up the house was this large iridescent mushroom, like a lamp almost. You thought it was maybe a light or like a lantern that had a mushroom cap face glass. But now that you're getting downstairs, you realize no, that was a real mushroom growing out of the ceiling of the house. Because there's another one down here, and as you're walking down the staircase, you can kind of see the top of the ceiling and see where its roots have it in the floorboard.
Mason's just looking at this. Quite amazing, because I mean, she did grow up with halflings in a in a basically like a hobbit hole, so she's looking just amazed at like how this is kind of working.
You'll be a little bit more amazed when you get to the bottom, and standing there at the checkout counter, she's like, "Oh, give me 1 second. I have a customer." You look over at the customer, and well, for lack of a better word, he looks like a lich.
So Maisland immediately jumps back on the stairs and kind of stares at.
He looks at you. The lich looks at you and says, "What? Never seen a lich before?"
Not one that. Uh, no, apologies. Didn't mean any disrespect.
Ah, it's
Um,
fine. I was only messing with you. You must be from upstairs. You look like a Silencia. They tend to not come down here.
uh,
She's like, if only it was that easy. And she goes, here you go, Gerald. There's the potions for your friends. Ah, thank you. They got into some trouble looking for some ingredients for me. And then he takes it, gives her some money, which, by the way, you notice are different from the money is different from what you're used to seeing. And then he walks out of the establishment and closes the door.
and I just, as soon as he leaves and closes the door, I'm like looking at Eileen and looking at the door, and I'm going, you have, that was a lich.
Yes, liches tend to occupy all sorts of government down here. Also, one of them, like I said earlier, controls the giant Goliath. He's in charge of the farm down the street.
So, so you don't kill them here?
Well, well, not unless they've gone rogue or bad. It does happen. Those who have the undeath can just suffer madness, but it's rare in these parts.
A good lich.
I wouldn't say good. Eh, more like
Okay,
neutral. He,
a cordial lich.
oh yes, very cordial. Gerald is one of the best. He's a good customer too. He employs living as well as undead. He needed a potion for a few of his workers that were out gathering ingredients.
What fucking place am I in? And like Maiselin's just standing there, like trying to like comprehend everything, like so far out of her element.
She's like, anyways, your stuff's in this chest. She heaves up this chest, douche, puts on the counter.
And Maiselin immediately goes over to it, opens it, and takes like a mental inventory of everything that's in the chest.
Well, everything that you had on you was in there. Well, should be. Unless one of the hooligans got into my chest when I was helping their mother the other day.
So she immediately starts putting everything on, getting, you know.
She calmly directs you to the back room. Change in there, not out in the open.
Apologies. So she takes the chest and she goes into the back room and starts, and gets herself ready.
While you're in the
just,
back room, you notice this is the kitchen. And again, you see, like, hanging from the thing, you see what you assume is that bird you ate earlier. It's not completely plucked yet, and it seems to have a vibrant plume. And, more mushrooms you don't know about, more plants you've never seen. A huge, like, hunk of meat hanging from a hook that you would assume was from some form of either bovine or, like, buffalo-ish style creature.
as
And it
she looks
seems to be magically preserved as it's chilled to the touch, because you can't help but touch it.
interesting. So once she touches the meat and she notices that it's chilled and everything seems to be like oddly preserved, she immediately frantically gets dressed and frantically goes and makes sure that she has everything on her, so that she's ready for anything, because she knows she's really out of her element.
Oh, she has no idea.
No, but she's already, she's like, I have no idea what I'm doing, so where I am, so she's just prepping herself for anything that comes up.
No, alright. So, whenever you're done,
Yep.
you walk back out to the main room. She's like, oh, you're done. Good. Well, I'll put on the I'll be back sign, and we can go to meet my friend. Oh, I do have to note, before we leave, once we get through the downtown area, stay on the cobblestone road. Follow me on the road. Do not go off the road. Please do not go off the road. Many
Right.
people always forget to listen to that rule. They think it's just a jest. No, we seriously mean it. As long as you're on the cobblestone road, none of the things off to the right or the left can touch you.
Cobblestone Road. Right. Okay. I will stay
Don't want you to
immediately.
end up like Mrs. Harris's kid last week. He was eaten by a fungal growth. They told him not to go off the road. He did it anyways.
I will be your shadow. Um, can can I just ask for a quick favor?
Sure, what can I do you for?
If anything is hostile, and I need to take action, can you just let me know? Because now that I've seen the Lich, I'm going to try to not freak out.
Well,
Uh,
most things that are hostile will try to attack you. But like I said, if we're on the cobblestone road in between the downtown and the regular area, you won't have to worry about the things off the road. Like I said, it's just basically a magical barrier for the road that keeps you safe when you're traveling. At least we got for this area of the Golgari. I don't know about other areas. If they even have the barriers. My cousin, I don't think they have a barrier over there. I think every time they have to go between the thing, they hire a lotlith to redirect said beasties if they do come to the path.
Interesting. Okay. Um, Lead the way then, I guess.
All right. Uh, she opens the door and she beckons you outside because she has to lock up.
Yeah.
And
And Maislin
you
stepping.
step out into probably the you've been to the Underdark. This is like the Underdark, but half nature, half construction, all moss, fungus. The houses are covered with they're dark dark wood with fungal growths. The streets are lit by large fungi, the combination of torchlight and hey, some of them even have lanterns that look like firebugs in them. And apparently Gerald wasn't the only undead down here. There's a gentleman with an undead horse pulling his cart, going down. Seems to have several different cargo. You see another gorgon across the street. There's what looks like, well, the reverse of what you think the gorgon would be. There's someone with a snake lower half and a human upper half conversing with said gorgon. There there are some of these bug people that you had heard about. There are a few of them are over there. They look like hunters, and they have a small cart with several large mushrooms and a something you don't even want to know what that is. Kind of creature on the cart. Um, you look off to the right. You see the giant that she was talking about carrying a large sack, and there seems to be some guys holding some I guess staffs with some more of that torchlight falling behind it. It lumbers in the distance, as you can see down the street. And yeah, these buildings are vast. If you look up, you notice that you can't see the ceiling, but you can see a very, very large structure that has a bridge coming from the right and the left, meeting it in the middle. And on the very middle of the structure, and it comes down almost like a reverse spire. And on the middle of the structure is a symbol, and you hear voices. It's like you're in downtown Metropolis. Everyone's talking. There's elves down here, which you notice. There's a mix of regular elf. There's a few humans down here. You do notice that there are some trolls that look like orcs, and you see something that resembles drow, but if a drow was a wild barbarian with shaman paint.
I so Maislin immediately starts to
Yeah, you see
like.
all this, and and Eileen's just behind you, locking up the door.
So
She's
she goes from so Maislin goes from like weird freak out mode to starting to calm a little bit when she sees the elves because it's familiar. She sees the humans, she sees the orcs and half orcs, and she's kind of like, okay, this is it's not completely upside down, but she there is some familiarity, so she has a little bit of comfort,
yeah,
but she's still like really freaked out.
yeah, yeah, like yeah. It's odd because over to the right, you would be disgusted to hear this, but there is an undead and an elf, and they're holding hands in the open.
Interesting.
Yes.
What does the symbol look like?
Ah, 1 second here. I'll send it to you. I thought I would have had. I forgot to prepare symbols just to show you. I have them on my actual maps, but not here.
Oh, also just a point of order. When she was getting her stuff on, she would have braided her hair in like a very tight braid.
Got you. And now the dog is on to the next foot. Now that she has licked every single inch of my other foot. Just some extra dialogue that anyone listening in or will eventually listen in to hear about the dogs. Come down here to find Golgari. So it looks like this. Anyone who's going to be watching this video is going to see the structure I mentioned in a slideshow eventually if they watch it long enough. But this is the symbol, and it is growing like a bright greenish orange, and on this structure, almost like if it was lit up from the inside, like a large watchtower, but seems to be attached to the ceiling and hanging down.
She's gonna stare at the skull, at the symbol, and just try to take a mental note of what it looks like, and just because she's very much into like trying to understand the different societies, and
While you're staring
she.
there dumbfounded, Eileen's gonna walk up behind you and wave her hand in front of your face, say hello.
Oh yeah, apologies.
She's like, "Oh, you were staring at the symbol. That's the Gulgari symbol. It symbolizes it. Well, that's for this particular area of the Gulgari. That is where we're going."
Interesting. Yeah. Uh, this is quite an interesting place.
Oh yes, I always get that from people that aren't from around here, even if they're only upstairs.
Right. But you do have elves here.
Yes, all over the place. Uh, be careful of those ones over there. She points to the shaman-looking ones. She's like, they're a little territorial down here, but yeah, they also have different values, similar to the troll. They're harder to get along with.
Yeah, they're harder to get along with where I'm from too. Um,
Oh, you have them there.
not
Do they
quite like.
control the fungus as well as they do down here?
No.
Oh,
But they don't quite look like that. But it's a version of that.
well, yes.
It's kind of like they look like them, only more elvish. I guess is less barbaric, actually.
Oh, more refined. Well,
Yeah.
that would be a good taste to see. You see very few refined Shadowfell elves.
R- I'm sorry. What did you call them?
Oh, Shadowfell elves. There are others down here too. And one second, because I forgot the name of these other fucking elves that live down here. Gary. I forgot the name of the other ones because one of them is the Shadowfell elves. Oh, sorry. There's also the Devkarin and the Erstwhile. The Erstwhile are very few of them left, but the Devkarin are devious in nature. They're not quite as dark as the Shadowfell elves, but they have spent most of their time down here.
Interesting. I am quite fascinated by this.
Oh yes, we're part of well, this particular area we're known as the Street Swarm.
I'm sorry. The street. What?
The Street Swarm. Golgari have a motif of insects and fungus. It's it it's just home, with a different flavor. Of course, it's what I've grown up with, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, apologies. I'm just kind of taking this all in.
Yes. Now you don't necessarily have to be a Golgari to be living down here, but with the guild, you do get a little more bonuses.
You mentioned these guilds before. Um, uh, what? Could you tell me about them?
Oh
We
yes,
can talk.
while we walk. It's quite a long story, and well, whew, I don't know if I should begin with the beginning or just tell you the basics. Well, we do have quite a little ways to walk. So, so we're gonna go into a little story time. She's gonna first start about how way back in the day, before many of the cities were even built, there was constant warring between 10 different factions. And eventually, one day, a being named Azor showed up. and gave order to the plane. Or actually, there were only 9 factions. He founded his own faction, a 10th faction, which established the 10 guilds, and he put into effect magic that prevented the guilds from warring. However, this magic didn't last 100% to the effectiveness for very long, because eventually the pact would have been broken at least a few times by now. But after the society had basically grown up with the guilds, they kind of stayed uniform even though they existed. She mentions that the Golgari at one point were actually outlawed by the guild system, but since the war that recently happened downstairs or upstairs, they've become common citizens again, like they did before the first time the guild pact was broken. Because at one point, if you were even mentioned being in league with the Golgari, you would be locked up. It's mainly because they don't know our ways of life. And while you're talking, or she gives you the story, there's a little bit more to it. I can go into more detail, but later on I'll cover more of it throughout the campaign.
Hmm?
So, she basically just gives you the Golgari side of it. She's like, she goes over some of the parents. The person who founded the Golgari was a necromancer that became a lich, and he believed in the cycle of life and that death is just part of the cycle. And the Golgari fill the void of like the farmers slash waste recyclers of Ravnica, which at this point she says that Ravnica is quite large. It's the largest city on the planet, and she keeps mentioning how big everything is, and that y'all are only in a very small section of the Golgari swarm under Ravnica, which you're being dumbfounded at. She explains how the Gorgons at one point, trio sisters ruled the Gorgons, and they kind of took it down the wrong path, and then eventually a lich named Gerard was in control, but he was short-lived. And finally, Vraska returned and has put Golgari back into the limelight of being, well, not criminals. And now we've worked closer with the guilds than ever before. And while she was telling you all this, y'all were walking through, and at one point on the cobblestone path that she mentioned, you see off in the distance this weird like fungus monster that looks at you for a second, and you all like lock eyes, and it moves forward, but then towards you, but like as soon as it gets within about 20 feet of the barrier activates and it fucking face plants the barrier, and then it goes away. And at that point, she says, "See, as long as you're on the path, you're safe."
Right. And as soon as the thing face plants the barrier, Maisel's going to jump back and like a little bit. And, if you take a few steps back and just grab her sword and then see that what happened and kind of like get awfully uncomfortably close to Eileen.
She's gonna chuckle at that and just continue her story as you're walking. You basically walk for a little while. And you come to you leave like basically a small downtown area and enter a small downtown rural kind of area. You enter a much larger city structure, and you head towards what looks like you've seen lifts before, but you've never seen one this large, and you don't even know how it works because there's no chains to pull it up. And she's like, she walks up to a gentleman at a stall. She says, "Wait right here," and she points to this bench, and she walks up to a stall, and like you're in a much more bustling center, and you can still see Eileen, but this place has got even larger buildings. It's got way more dense population. You see that there are even more undead now. There are more of those weird elves that look like barbarians. There are there are more of the snake people that you've never seen before or you haven't seen before. It's just as far as you're concerned, is just madness. She goes and then she returns after a few seconds. She says, like, I have a tickets for the lift. Come on. And then she directs you to the lift, which, again, you've seen a lift before, which, say normally is like a 5 by 10 lift or something like that. This, however, is like a 40-foot radius lift with various seats and benches for people to sit on. And you get on, and after a few minutes, the lift goes up. You see what looks like magic course through into the middle of the lift, and a beam of light shoots from the middle all the way to the top, and the lift begins to rise. And you can ask questions to her while y'all are on the lift if you want, because it's going to take at least a couple minutes.
So everybody just, so to these guilds, I mean, anybody can be a part of the guilds. Like, it doesn't.
There's always an initiation, so I hear. For me, it was more just supplying any guild member in need of aid. I'm a healer, after all. But I do get many perks, as in better prices with other guild members. First dibs on stock. There are perks to it, but you don't have to be in the guild to live in Ravnica.
Do you have any guilds here that specialize in? Do the guilds specialize in various types of work? I'm assuming.
Oh yes. See, when I said that the Golgari are the farmers, that just means just like the general idea of what the guild is in charge of. We cover whew, there's quite a lot of things that they cover. I mean, she leans in. She's like, for example, the Akron. She's like, you're not really supposed to speak out about them too much, but they're a group of, Frasca used to be one of them. She was the leader. They're basically, were assassins.
And she, like, Maislin's ears kind of perk up and say, "Assassins, you say?"
Yes, yes. She was quite a good one, I hear. Well, the only problem is she left quite a calling card, turning her victims to stone.
Who was the leader?
Frasca again, the current leader of the Golgari. At one point, she was just a humble assassin. Of course, like again, you're not really supposed to talk about this, but all of us Gorgons know.
Is the Akron not allowed to be and is not a recognized guild?
No, no, no. The Akron is more like an organization within the guild that no one's supposed to know about. So, try not to say too much about it.
And they're part of the Golgari Guild.
They're not She puts her hands up and makes like quotations. Officially part of the Golgari.
Interesting. Fascinating. And the other guilds?
Oh yes. The only other one that would be on par of secrecy would be the guild all about secrets itself. They're called the Demir. They're basically spies, also assassins, information brokers. That's what they tend to deal with. She goes back to her story about how before the first guild pact, the people thought that they were a myth. But the person who broke the original first part of the guild pact was the Demir guy attempting to seize control of all of Ravnica, which of course ended badly for his guild. Now they're a little bit more well known, but they still perform the same illicit things. Of course, the illicit things are illegal, but the information broking, private detective work, stuff of that nature is still legal. But when it comes to of course, assassins, spies, I hear that if you need information, they can pull it straight from your head.
Fascinating.
Of course, she goes over. There's the Silenzia, which are the goody goody two shoes that live above the goody goody two shoes people that live above us. They're all about commune, and they're the opposite of us. Whereas we kind of revel in the cycle, most plainly known at the end of the cycle, They're more about the life and growth of the cycle. And she goes over the Gruul, who are all about, well, before the recent war, they were just they would just raid parts of the city and demolish it because their beliefs is returning the city back to the wild. Now they're a little more focused, more like demolitionists. They bring down ruins that no one can occupy. They still occasionally there are a few bands of the Gruul that still raid things they shouldn't, and well, if they get caught, they're swiftly punished for.
And who punishes them?
Ah, that would be either the Boris or the Azorius. The Azorius are the ones that make the laws. Well, before the recent war, they had a little too much power. Now, with the current guild pact actually staying on Ravnica, uh, they're they've been a little. The power balance has been shifted back to, well, everyone has equal power.
So you said the Azores and who else?
Oh, the Boros. They're we would consider if Ravnica had a military, they'd be the military. But it's more they're more akin, yeah, to military, but they're like the police officers. Whereas they're the ones who the Azorius say so and so committed crime. The Boros are the ones that raid your house to arrest you.
Interesting.
Of course, an Azorius would be with them for an arrest of that caliber, but they do tend to keep the peace. But most guilds keep their own peace, and as she says that, you realize that there were a few people walking around that were well armed with the Golgari symbol emblazoned on their chests, to guards.
Hmm.
You didn't see any of these Azorius or Boros. She goes over that the Azorius wear white and blue, sometimes some gold trim, and then the Boros are all about red and white, and sometimes silver, because it's hard to stain the armor red. And then she talks. There's more. There's the entertainment guild, the Rakdos. I don't quite like the carnivals, but the clubs are nice. And I don't really want to talk much about them. They tend to get me quite squeamish.
Squeamish, how?
By carnivals. Oh, you've never been to one. It's hard to explain. Have you ever been to a carnival?
Um, yes, but from where I'm from, so your carnivals could be, what I'm seeing, quite different.
If it's from the Rakdos, they are probably quite different indeed. Especially if Gerald was the one who gave you the fright.
Interesting.
Let's just say the one that got me last time I went, the performer had way too many piercings and was juggling flaming torches on a unicycle, on a tripwire, a razor wire, mind you, over a pit of lava.
Okay, you had me until the lava.
Also, he was being prodded at by a few of the. They have such fascinating names as Pain Rippers, but all they really are people that stoke the crowd. And she explains that they're just a brand of demon that pokes. If the person performing isn't doing their performance properly, it gives them a good prodding with their trident.
Wow. I think this is so good that I did not know much about Ravnica. before entering into this campaign because it's going to be very easy for me to play Maislin, just totally amazed by all of this.
Oh, and we're not even. I mean, I haven't even talked about the is it, which, by the way, uh, your lift would have arrived by now. We've been talking way longer than a couple minutes. She said, "Oh, we're here. We don't want to get off before it moves up to the next platform."
No, oh, absolutely. Please lead the way.
Which you're still amazed at how this thing even moved, but you know, you because it seems the whole thing is made of like a stone slab.
I feel like this is going to be like for Maislin, this is like sensory overload.
Oh, it is, and you're not even above ground yet. And that's where we're going to end this session 0 is with you above ground. So you're going to get to be amazed at least a few more times before we're done here.
Excellent.
So she takes you through, and um, as you're walking across, you now are walking across one of those bridges you saw earlier, and it's much larger than you thought it was. From when you were down in the house, and she pauses and brings you over to the edge of the bridge. Says, "Look, that's where I live, all the way over there." And you can see a giant mushroom. I live under that mushroom, which you recognize from earlier as one of the mushrooms lighting the place up. And it's like from afar you saw the bridge, and like you thought, oh man, that's maybe like a 5 or like a 10 foot across bridge. Now that you're up here, that bridge is like 100 foot wide. It is that's how massive that building is.
I feel like this is like somebody's first time to Times Square.
Oh
You know,
yes. And you get across the bridge, and you get stopped by the guards when you get to the bridge, and they say halt. And no one's allowed into the embassy unless they have an appointment. And she leans in and whispers to the guard. She's like, "Oh, that's an exception then. Come on, you two, this way." Come on. Nothing eventful really happens across the bridge except for maybe more undead and things that are really out of the place here that you would just be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is where I'm at." But you've already very much sensory overloaded on the normal citizens that are down in the
right.
Golgari.
Maislin still gets a little shifty every time there's an undead like that comes close to her. She's just there's like she's trying to hide it, but there is a twinge of like uncomfortableness.
Yeah. But you're brought into the main part of the building, and you're brought into what looks like a much smaller lift, and it seems to this one actually has a chain, so you're a little relieved that there's no more of that huge magic that you're sure that could kill you if it was redirected in a way. And you go up the lift about, from your estimation, a few stories, and it's one of those lifts on the side of the building, so like you can see out over everything.
So Maislin's just gonna stare out over everything, but also always trying to keep an eye on like when they stop, because she wants to be hyper aware of like every like if there's a way in, there's got to be a way out. She's always looking for like an escape route in case something goes down.
So Mason notices you looking around. Or Aileen's like, oh yes, there's the stairs, but it would take a lot longer. Do you get that part, or did I go out?
Yeah, you started to go out a little bit, but I heard that there were stairs, and Eileen said if though there were stairs, but that would take a lot longer.
Okay, good. I was making sure because I just letting the dogs out, and I wanted to make sure that they all got out, so I had to step outside so they'd follow me.
No, no worries.
Wireless headset though, so you know.
You got love it.
And from your estimation, you're already so high up that you can't quite tell like how high you gotten, but you maybe 10, 15 floors, and then the chains kind of grind to a stop. It's like, oh, this should be it. And then she opens the door and you walk in, and it's compared to other places you've been, by the way, I forgot to mention the inside of the embassy is like pristine, like well polished marble stone. Uh, the fungi are kept pots. So is the moss. There might be a little bit of vines here and there, but they seem to be decorative instead of actually overgrowing things. There's a lot of Golgari symbols, but the place you're in when you first step out on the floor is a large triangle with a blue circle in the middle of it. And she points at it and says, "This is an Azorius symbol, and my friend works with the Azorius, which is why I brought you to it."
And you said it's a large triangle with a what in the middle of it?
I'll send you the picture in a little bit, but um, so this particular floor is a little bit different from the one you were just at. This one has lots of blues and whites, and everything is like, it looks like someone with OCD worked on this room, whereas before, fungi don't necessarily grow the same way, so it's a little different.
More natural.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Let's see here. I'm grabbing the picture to share with you. Boop boop boop. Azorius logo. There you go.
Sure.
And you're walking down, and there looks like a little hallway, and then after you get down the hallway a few feet off to the right, there's a desk, and sitting at the desk, someone with glasses and blue skin. They have blue skin, and they seem to have a slightly large hat on. And Eileen's like, "Derek, I need your help." And then Derek's like, "Ah!" Drops his paper and steps back startled. His glasses about fall off his face. He's like, "You startled me, Eileen. I was busy reading." She's like, "Don't be such a slouch. I think my friend here might be a planeswalker." And then she points at you, and he's like, "Oh, a planeswalker." And he stands up, pushes his glasses up to the brim of his nose, and he's like, "Well, can you planeswalk?"
I don't necessarily know what that is.
She's like, "Derek, she doesn't even know if she's a planeswalker, but she's never heard of the Golgari or any of the guilds." And she says something about Waterdeep. It's like, "Waterdeep?" He puts his finger to his chin, taps it for a few seconds. "I've heard of that." And then he goes to behind him, and he's got a bookshelf. And by the way, this guy's like 6'8", but he's very slender. He's in white and blue robes, and his hat's got a white, is like almost like a sailor hat, but instead of the little, the kind of like, trying to explain, basically like the small chef hats, but this thing's like it's made out of leather, but it's like white, and then the top of it's got a blue trim where the bowl would be. It's a blue.
Gotcha.
And he's got a bunch of books, and he's got really long fingered hands, and he's going through the books, and he grabs one, pulls it off, and he flips through Waterdeep, Waterdeep, Waterdeep. While you're there, you notice that you've never seen the writing before in your life, because he's got a bunch of papers laid out.
Strange symbols.
She's like, "Oh, add another one." She doesn't even know what the writing is. That's just the common writing for this area.
Right. Yeah. No idea.
And then he's flipping through the book. He's like, "Shh, one moment. Waterdeep." He's like, "Yes, that is from a different realm. We have it cataloged here. Looks like your friend is indeed a planeswalker."
So, are you telling me I'm on a different plane?
He's like, "Yes, it's most fascinating. Most of us that work with the planeswalker department of the Azorius, or most of the guilds, where the Azorius sorry, where are my words? Most of us that work with the planeswalker department in the Azorius are very fascinated in and interplanar travel.
Um, I am fascinated as well, only from a personal experience perspective. Um, I, yeah, 1 minute I was in a basement laboratory, and then there was a large white flash, and I woke up here.
Ah, how did you find her, Eileen? I was out gathering supplies for my job. It's a healer, and she's like, there was a small flash, and she appeared here, and she had she says this small U-shaped symbol above her forehead, and I'd heard that when Miss Frasca uses her power, she also has said symbol above her head.
And so Maislin would have never have seen that small U shape, so she kind of just tries to feel her forehead.
Oh no no no! It wasn't on your head. It was kind of like floating above your head, and she kind of puts like about 2 inches off of where your center of your forehead would be, and she makes a little like U sign with her hand, and it's basically just a symbol for Ravnica, or Return
Right.
to Ravnica, which I'll give that to you later. It's basically just a U. It's a U
Gotcha.
with it's got like a point instead of like the bottom of the U sits kind of like heavy, like something sitting like a almost like a cup with a pointed top. But
Gotcha.
it's not that different. It's
Gotcha. Gotcha.
basically whenever a planes walks, they have the symbol of the plane above their head when they show up at a plane.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know.
Yes. And she was heavily poisoned, so whatever laboratory she was in, she must have got poisoned. She wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wasn't going to pry on it. Everyone's got their own personal issues.
Unfortunately, it wasn't my laboratory, so I wasn't really too sure what I was poisoned with.
Ah, yes. I do not know what poisoned you, because I do not know why it didn't kill you. She's like, she is fascinating in more ways than more, Derek. Did you know her entire body is poisonous? Don't kiss her. And he's like, I
Yes,
didn't think of that. And he's like, I wasn't even planning on that. And he's preposterous. He's like, oh, I'm just fascinated that I get to meet a planeswalker before I have to take them up to see the boss.
I'm sorry, the boss.
Oh yes, I have to take you to the agency where we check in new planeswalkers. Obviously, you've never been here before, and you didn't even know yourself was a planeswalker. Therefore, you're not in the system, and any planeswalker not in the system, that of course is new. We are a little lenient. We don't just immediately arrest you, but it is legal to not be registered in the system if you are a planeswalker. Which is why there's some leniency. I'll just be taking you to the check-in office.
So
Eileen
I
can
look
come with us if she wants. She's like, oh, yeah, I'll be fine. I don't really have much else to do today. I did already lock up, and Gerald was my only scheduled customer.
and she kind of like looks at Eileen, saying, "Yes, please come with." She's
And
just
she's like, do you have more of those things that you put on your face? Oh, the ones that help you with the sunlight? Yes, it's so bright upstairs. And he's like, oh yes, I do. He reaches through his cupboard. He pulls out what you assume are, spectacles, but they seem to have a dark tinted glass. So here, hands them to Eileen. She said, oh, thank you. I don't know where I keep mine because I always forget to bring them when I'm going up to the surface because I don't normally wear them. He's like, ah, yes. Most of you that live down here most of your lives have trouble up there.
so he basically handed her sunglasses.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
She's like, it also calms down the people that are natives upstairs. Many people get that misconception I told you earlier. We can't just turn you to stone just by looking. We have to focus. And some of us can't even do it very well. I mean, I can, but I've never really used it in a more than a life and death situation.
Good to know.
And he's like, oh, yes, yes, yes. He's like, well, I need to pack my things. And he starts frantically putting papers away. But he's doing it very perfectly. Like, his shit's like not even off by an inch. But he's doing it like quickly and frantically. And he's filing it away and he's putting his stuff together. And he's like, I must leave a a message if someone shows up while I'm not here. And then he walks over to like where you had came in before earlier, and like he begins chanting and puts his hand up, and a little magic circle appears on his hand, around his hand, and the symbol from earlier glows, and then he leaves a message saying that I have gone out. If you need me, please leave it with Laura down at the receptionist desk. And then he pushes his hand forward, and where the symbol on the ground is, a sneer-splitting image of himself is standing in the spot, and it's repeating this message on repeat. And it's just see-through, like it's an apparition. Like you could put your hand through it.
Maislin does. She goes over to it and puts her hand through it, and she's just kind of staring at
It's
it.
just simple illusion magic. I can leave it here. The symbol will power it, so it will repeat the message on loop until I return.
Fascinating.
She's like, oh, yes, yes. She's like, how do you feel about teleportation?
Um,
I always ask before I do it, because most people don't like it. If you would rather us take the lift, we can.
Teleportation is fine. Maislin is like half listening to him because she's staring at the illusion.
That's when I'm just gonna cut you off there. That's when Eileen smacks Derek in the back of the head. You know I get sick when you do the teleporting. He's like, oh, I forgot you're coming with us. His hat falls on the ground. You can see that he's bald and he's completely blue. And he picks his hat up. He's like, all right, we'll take the lift then. It's just much faster with teleporting. And he takes you over to the lift, and he's like, come on in. By the way, the lift is big enough for like 5 people, so it's big enough for all 3 of you.
Perfect. Maislin's still trying to figure out how she can use that illusion to to her advantage, like in her, in
Oh
her
no,
assessment.
you would have to know what type of magic circle he pulled out of his ass.
Oh yeah, no, she's just looking and trying to just imagining if she had known how to do that, where she could use that.
She's like, if you're interested in the law mage, after you've gotten your temporary citizenship card, you should hop on down to the Azorius district. However, I don't quite know how they do when it comes to accepting planeswalker applicants. But as I do know, it only took me 10 years of study in order to do that.
No. I'm good. I was just fascinated by it.
Oh, it's okay. It only took me 20 years to get my diploma.
20 years. Goodness. That's
He's like, Devakran here. He's like, Derek here is. Well, he's old. He's like, that's not very nice. I'm not that old. I'm still young. And he shrugs her off. And
how old, if you don't mind me asking, are you?
Only about 200.
200 years old.
He's way older than me. She's like, we only age a little bit slower than humans. I'm only 27.
And Maislin's an elf, so she's going to be
like 100 at least. She's like,
yeah,
she's like, don't even say it. You're obviously an elf, and you look to be fully matured. I am the young one here.
Yes, unfortunately, I am a bit older.
Yes. But at the current moment, I know more than you, so I am your senior. Ha 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 ha.
That is fair. And Maislin kind of chuckles.
So, as you're going up this time, you get up to close to what you assume is the top. About another 20 floors, at least. Again, it's hard to tell, except for the fact that the building is getting smaller as you look up, or, closer to the ceiling. And he's like, this is the highest this lift will take us. And y'all step off. And in this particular part of the building, it's back to the Golgari standard but the pristine Golgari that you were used to earlier, with the fungus actually in pots and the decorative vines, the Golgari symbol on the wall. But it seems to be a rounded chamber, and as they walk around, uh, Derek flashes his I guess his guild badge, and the guards just stand aside and let y'all through. And you get on another platform and you go up.
And these are the Golgari gods, correct?
Yes, there's still Golgari guards. We haven't left yet. And he says, "Well, Derek, you gonna bring me back any of those scones this time?" He's like, I did forget last time. I apologize." He's like, "Make sure to send me a or a reminder message." He's like, I'll get Harry to do it later."
So, how high up is the surface?
"Well, we're still underground. It'll take about, I don't know, at least 10 minutes to reach the surface on the lift. We could have been there instantly if I had teleported." The two-way circle thing. He's like, "But it makes me sick. And the lift doesn't." He's like, "I'm used to the lift. I have to go on them every now and then." This is another one of those stone slabs, but it's much smaller. It seems to be made for maybe a small group of people. It's a lot more pristine than the one you saw before. Like the one before would be like public transport, huge slab. By the way, the slab lifts are just kind of self-improvised. They definitely have the magic technology to make them. I just thought it would be more cool to have these type of lifts than something standard.
Oh.
So
No, this is definitely cooler.
yeah, and you begin going up the shaft, and if you look up, you can see a light, a very small light, and as you're going up, it gets bigger and bigger. And Derek has just been staring at you this entire time with his glasses, like fascinating. She's like, "Don't mind Derek. He's just a Devarkin. They're all inquisitive or nosy, but he doesn't mean anything by it. Derek's nice. He's good people." He's like, "I hope so."
Maisland just kind of looks over at him and says, "Pleasure."
He's like, again, planeswalkers, fascinating. I wonder how it works. From what I hear, you have something called a spark in you. It allows you to travel the worlds at will. But of course, if it's your first time doing it, I'm sure you wouldn't know how to do it again until someone taught you or you figured it out.
Yes, at will would be.
I hear that they can only do it about once, and then it gets very tired and have to rest before doing it again. But they can do it pretty much at will.
Fascinating. Yeah, I at will is an opportune word, isn't it?
Yes. I hear that they focus, but at will, without much preparation is what I meant. Instead of like earlier where I had to cast a spell and say words, they more meditate for less than a few seconds. At least that's what the demonstrator that works with us, who is an official citizen of Ravnica and also a planeswalker, he demonstrated to a few of us inquisitors. It was quite interesting.
Fascinating. Yes, I do hope to learn more to eventually return home.
Yes. Again, other than that, I don't know. Just hope that nothing planeswalker-ish happens in the next few days, or well, weeks at least. When we get to planeswalkers that are from all over now, we have a thing called a beacon, which attracts planeswalkers. It was originally not going to be kept in use, but we recreated a watered-down version of it to boost tourism from other lands. It was a fascinating idea. And he says that when something happens, like not all planeswalkers are as civil as yourself. When one commits crimes, and well, crimes that they don't get away with, we lock down the planet, or we lock down the city with an artifact. He's called the Immortal Sun. It prevents you from leaving the plane by planeswalking. so we can, of course, catch the culprit and have justice done. So as long as nothing like that happens in the next few weeks, you should be just fine. At returning, of course, if someone teaches you.
Yes. Let's hope everything stays on the how do they say, on the up and up.
Ah, yes. And this whole time, every now and then you glance up, the hole's getting bigger. Of course, you're getting up. So we should be arriving shortly. And about the time he says that, like, it's now very bright, and it's taking you a second to adjust as the light hits your eyes, and the platform sees to stop. And you end up in what looks like a central park, kind of. It's got this huge archway that has a whole bunch of different symbols, like the Golgari and the Azorius one, and a bunch of others you haven't seen. And I'll give them to you later. And he remarks that this is one of the miniature Transguild promenades close to where we need to take you.
I'm
And
sorry, did you say
Transguild promenades are just like places for all the guilds to get along. And as you look around, you see a bunch of brightly colored dressed people and normally dressed people. The only thing that stands out now is now you're seeing more humans and elves than you were undead and other things. But you also see minotaurs. There's a few centaurs roaming around. You see one guy that looks like he's made of fire. There's some lizard people, and there's a couple of these really weird looking people. They look like they're really big. They have like a really long nose and tusks. You've never seen them before. You see, and of course, like I said, it's like a central park area, but off in the distance you can see buildings.
And I'm sorry, did you say this park is a miniature promenade?
Oh yes, very miniature. It's just a small place for us to gather. If you continue down this way, and he points to the west, which is unfortunately not where we're going, but we're going to the east, you'll run into the market. We can find all sorts of goods, ranging from every part of the guild. Eh. But of course, if you're not from here, you wouldn't even have any Xenos.
Xenos.
It's the local currency.
Where would I might?
Oh, when we take you to the check-in office, they'll exchange your money for our money if you wish. It does have a conversion rate.
Of course it does.
Well, we did as best we could, but to keep it fair. But the Orzhov are a greedy bunch.
Orzhov?
They're the ones that handle the churches and banking.
Churches and banking.
Yes, yes. At one point, they did actually have a god they worshipped. Now it's more communion, prophets, you know.
It's an odd combination. And then she stops and goes, actually, it makes sense, actually.
Yes, yes. That's what a lot of people end up saying. And
So
they're taking you to the east, and Eileen is there, but you can kind of tell she's unhappy. Even with the sunglasses, the light seems to be hurting her eyes. That, and people keep looking at her like she's weird.
I kind of lean over to her and I just say, thank you very much for accompanying me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's no problem. It's hard to get used to the top. Again, people always look at you a little weird when you're used to growing down there.
Yes, people looking weird at people have been looking weird at me my whole life.
She laughs at that. Ha! You're the most normal of us three. You should fit in well here.
Normal is a relative term.
Yes. As you're walking by, you notice something Very weird. As you look overhead, you see what looks like 4 or 5 birds flying by. At first, oh, nice, cool. Those birds are huge and they have large white wings. But then you do a double take and realize that those are angels. Say what?
I said, I'm saying on behalf of Maisland, she's probably looking up, going, interesting,
And she's
fascinating.
like, oh, it's just a sky patrol. They they tend to send some of the best to patrol the promenades. You know.
Are, are, are those are those angels?
Oh yeah, yes. The most of the high-ranking Boros are angels.
Fascinating.
Yes.
We on my plane we have them as well, but they're quite rare, and they don't they don't necessarily um, show themselves to too many people.
Ah, well, we don't have them in spades here either, but they are in charge of the sky patrols. I mean, it's better than seeing what is those? Those ones that ride the drakes, the sky riders. Those large lizardy beasts.
Did you say what? I'm sorry. What do they ride?
They ride. They're not quite dragons. They're drakes. They're much smaller. You could probably fit maybe 2 to 3 people on one. Of our size, that is. You certainly couldn't put more than one Minotaur on one. But they're also part of the Boros Sky Battalion.
Interesting.
And as you're walking, the city structure is getting bigger as the trees and stuff are kind of. Well, actually, the trees aren't getting smaller. The buildings are just getting larger as you walk more east. Finally, when you enter the promenade, um, there seems to be a skinny bridge leaning out, and you get up to the bridge, and then you look down, and you notice that it's at least several hundred feet before you'd hit the concrete, and the the building you thought was the same size as the tree goes all the way to the bottom as you were walking along,
Jesus. Oh,
like a spire.
that
Along
is
with several others of the similar size. The bridge isn't quite skinny now that you realize it. It's another one of those ones that from afar looked like a small bridge, but now that you're up close to it, it's at least 30 feet wide. He's like, we'll take this one down to across to the other side, and then we'll start heading our way down to the city center where I need to take you. And he points over yonder into the distance, and he says, the building with the red roof over there. And you can kind of barely see a red roof very far off in the distance, like way down there. Across the like a small river is like a huge church-like structure. It's kind of hard to explain like the vastness of the city. This whole city is huge, and as far as you look out into the horizon, all you see are city structure, city structure, city structure. This promenade looked like it was, a pretty decent size Central Park. We're talking like most small villages would be the size of this promenade. And this city structure is, well, let's just say the Golgari place you were before could have fit 2 or 3 water deeps. The place up here, water deep is like so small in comparison, you're just sitting here like, what the hell am I looking at?
Waterdeep would be like a small neighborhood inside this giant city.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. And
And
the building with the red roof.
yes, we need to take you there. That's the building that we share with the Boros, and Elune will be taking care of you when we get there.
Loon?
Loon. She's my boss. She is an angel.
Interesting.
Yes.
And she will be the one registering me.
Yes, yes. She handles many of the registrations. Not that we couldn't do it, but we try to keep one office per district. We're only in District 9 right now. And yes, District 9 includes the Golgari place below us and up here.
How many districts are there?
There's at least 10 in Ravnica. There are a few others, but they're outlying districts. They're not the 10 main ones. The 10th district is the one that holds the city center.
District 10.
Yes, kind of reversed. You would think District 1 would be the city center. I always thought it was weird.
And what houses District 1?
Oh, the districts, mini guilds are ours, the districts. It, it kind of goes
What?
back and forth. We share land. What do you mean? There are a couple districts specific to only. One second as I bring that up. Do. All the the guild houses, the head haunt guilds, are in the
Mm-hmm.
10th district. The 9th district is where you're at now. It used to just be Azorius district, but when the first guild pack broke, the Gruul claimed it and it was reclaimed by the Boros. Um, the 10th district is just extremely large. Azorius have a lot of the 2nd district as well. Uh, the Orzhov are also in the 1st district. And she points over at that church that you see that from earlier. You remember how big that building was when you got up close to it. The church looks massive from this distance, and it is very gothic. We're talking like huge steeples. You can see the stained glass from here. It's
And and
quite
and
large.
what and what god is worshipped in the church?
Ah, I think they used to worship something similar to Azor. Now I don't quite even know. Don't think they worship anything anymore. It's more about worshiping, I guess, money, profits. They're merchant god, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not too religious myself.
Fascinating.
She's like, I think it depends on what guild you're from, what kind of overall religion you follow. But the Orzhov basically have their hands in, well, even my business. I have to pay my tithes to the Orzhov.
And Orzhov. Look up in the sky. Do I see anything in the sky?
Well, now that you mention that, you see, well, since you're close to the 10th district, since you're in the 9th district, off towards the 10th district, which he points kind of somewhere to the north. He's like, uh, when he was telling you about the districts, you see this very large structure in the sky that appears to be moving. There are various other what look like ships, but are in the sky instead of in the water. And balloons, you know balloons, you've seen balloons as well, floating around. That's currently what you see in the air. And of course, you see birds off in the distance, but at this range, you don't know if those are more angels or if those are actual birds.
place is quite amazing.
Yes, yes. And well, this way, y'all been walking down the way, and as you've been walking, you notice that like that river seems to be one large man-made canal that stretches all around. But like when you look down and see the boats on there, you realize like that must be a galleon, and that you can fit at least 10 of those across the lake, like long ways.
And this is all, let's say, man-made, but this is all constructed.
Yes, very little of the realm is remains unconstructed. Even the Badlands, I hear, have ruins.
And and Ravnica is just a city on the
Yes,
planet.
though no, actually, it's more like Ravnica isn't the only city structure on Ravnica, but it is the largest, and we are known for it. Therefore, we call the world Ravnica in name of the city. But yes, cityscape spans our entire realm.
This is I have never seen anything like this.
Oh, don't ask me about the consistency. There's too many zeros, and I don't feel like mentioning it.
Consists.
Cons- con- Census. I meant to say federal census. You know, like
Yes, the
when you
census.
yes, when you calculate how many people live in your city.
Yes, I can only imagine. I will feel bad for the census taker.
Good thing they're undead.
They're undead. Interesting.
Yes, they're
So
a
you guys,
ghost. They don't sleep, so they can count longer.
you people do have quite an interesting use of undead.
Well, I wouldn't say use. He has his mind of his own. He can choose to work somewhere else if he wants.
Right. Apologies. No, I meant that. See where I'm from. And you may already know this, so I do apologize. But where I'm from, um, the undead are usually um quite the targets of violence because they're usually trying to do nothing but violence on others.
Well, oh, you must be talking about the mindless ones. Unfortunately, some do tend to suffer from well, we call it the mindlessness. It's when an undead loses its faculties and pretty much goes on you know, an undeathly rage is what I would call it. It can happen to undead that are old, really old, but we have magics to help with that. Sort of like tonics, but for the dead.
I find this completely amazing.
Oh, I'm sure you would if you've never seen, well, half the things you've seen here so far.
Yes, I haven't seen most of anything like this before. So yeah, it's quite amazing and quite shocking, actually. I'm doing my best to say keep my
I think it slaps you on the back. You're doing a good job. She's a little bit more cheerful. Got the dogs in, they're barking.
so Maisel is just gonna kind of with that is just kind of gonna go quiet and just kind of take this all in.
As you're walking down, you start getting you've gotten across that bridge and have started walking down. But as you're walking down, it still looks like you're in like a kind of a business commerce section, and there's stalls here and there. You start to notice something else added into the mix. You start noticing goblins and hobgoblins, and they are dressed like normal people. Some of them are even merching their wares. What's even better is when you come around the corner, there's a guy in the alleyway who's very pale, and he has vials of red liquid, And he's like, "Get your blood here, get your blood."
You know, Mason kind of looks at him and then turns to Eileen and goes, "Is that a vampire?"
Yes, that is a vampire. Um, only the Orzavian vampires, or the ones that tend to be live above ground, drink blood. But it's all willfully given. Well, as far as I know, it's all willfully given, or the public knows. I'm sure there are a few debtors that didn't pay their taxes and were forcefully drained, and then forced into, well, to pay off their debts in the afterlife.
You
Well, I.
just let them, and they can just walk around like everybody else.
Oh, why? Of course not. Well, I mean, well, obviously they don't walk like us because they're not. They're not. I mean, you don't walk like me. You're not a Gorgon.
No, I meant that they can just walk around freely.
Oh, why, yes. As long as they don't go on, like, a rampage or do commit any crimes, they're just fine. You can buy blood like he's selling. However, well, I do know a friend of mine who that can survive off of blood. Um, they say that you only want to buy from reputable dealers, though.
Where I'm from, all we do is kill vampires.
Ah, your vampires must not be as sophisticated.
Apparently not.
Well, there are two types of vampires down here. You had better stick with the blood drinkers over the other ones.
What are the other ones?
Well, I hear that they drink your memories.
Drinking milk.
Yes, yes. Some of the Demir employ them. They're really good at extracting memories, I hear. They can pull them out of your head like threads. And Derek has been kind of quiet. He's like, actually, that's quite true. They call it mind melding.
What? Shit. People are okay with that.
Well, mind melding is only legally allowed in against criminals that have been detained. I'm sure that Eileen has told you about the fact that there are always illicit people doing things they shouldn't, and well, as much as we try to stop the illicit things, they still happen.
Fascinating. Um, what do you consider illicit?
Well, I mean, I just mentioned that these vampires drink memories. If they don't get the memories of the criminal or the deceased that no longer have use of them, then they have to drain them from normal people. If one completely drains one's memories, they'd be nothing but a blank slate. That's kind of illegal. Kind of the
I see.
same with the blood drinker vampires. Of course, if they drink a random person dry, they'd get charged.
Fascinating.
But again, you can buy it in vials like that. I hear that some vampires buy certain vintages, or flavored blood, if you will.
The blood.
Yes, I hear that there's a dragon fruit variant that is all the rave amongst the Orzhov.
I am out of my element.
Yes. Another thing you see that's kind of interesting as you're walking down is you're starting to see some people wearing too many piercings and well, seem to be almost scantily clad, and one of them is juggling. And as you get closer, you realize he's juggling swords.
Are those, and I just look over at Eileen, are those the Rakdos you were telling me about?
Yes, thankfully this one is tame.
Tame?
Yes, tame. Like I said, the last one got me squeamish. This is far tamer. Well, like I said, I enjoy the clubs much more than I do the carnival. And then Derek's like, I too enjoy the clubs more. It's always better to hear good music than to see people doing that. And then now that you've gotten a little closer to him, you can see that the swords he's juggling, he's also throwing at his companion who is spinning on a wheel. Also with too many piercings and almost scantily clad dressed. And what appears to be turning the wheel are little imps.
This place is like something out of a children's book.
Ha! That's kind of funny. Children's books tend to be a little more colorful.
Right, not where I'm from, but
I'm sure that my children's book would be a little bit darker than when you're from, though. That okay? The first one that says the brightly colored children's book is Derek. The one saying that they're darker would be Eileen.
right. Perhaps.
He's he's like, are you? He's like, oh, you're probably right. You probably haven't read the Paradise Birds Fly South. And she's like, and you've probably not heard of the caterpillar that won up the wasp.
Unfortunately, no, I haven't heard of any of these.
Oh, we know that you haven't heard it. We were going back and forth with each other there.
Ah,
She's like, spoiler, the caterpillar dies.
shame, shame.
Oh, it's all part of the cycle, honey.
That is fair.
I just touched you. I'm sorry, my dog like freaked out because I touched her.
Hmm.
She's paranoid sometimes. So
Knowing that she's probably sent some people on to the so-called circle of life, so to speak. Knowing Maislin has sent many people on that journey, she kind of chuckles.
yep. She's like, I do try to stave it off, but as a healer, that is. Hey, the best thing to know is that if you're dying and you sign a contract with the Lotlith, they can raise you from the dead. When that happens, I turn my patients to stone so to preserve their corpse.
You turn them unstoned.
Yes, it requires a large amount of magic, but you can unstone them, and that makes a nicely preserved way of preserving a corpse. So that if they have a backlog of people to resurrect, they'll get to you eventually. Of course, you better take care to buy the premium service. I hear that some people get broken, and then they can't be raised or turned back to normal.
That was my next question. But good to know.
And Derek kind of shudders at all this. He's like, ugh. That part never truly understand that. It's a Golgari thing. You know, Derek. It's like, yes, I work with you guys on a daily basis, and I'm still not used to it.
Hopefully, I never have to experience it.
I hear as long as you're raised by the Lotlith or the Deverkin, you tend to retain more mental faculties than any other necromancer you'd encounter.
I've got to be picky when I die.
Well, yes.
Do my best.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing. Whatever you do, do not open a. Do not. He's just like, do not borrow money from the Orzhov. Just because you die doesn't mean they won't get their money back.
Gotcha.
And then Derek means by that is they're not really allowed to do it as much anymore. Only in severe cases. She's like, but it's still weird to basically be turned into an indentured servant after death.
What is the threshold that allows them to do that?
Oh, you have to be well into the tens of the thousands in debt.
So the trick is to be in debt, but not by much.
For the most part. And then Eileen's like, or not at all. Pay your taxes.
That's fair. I'm not in the habit of owing people anything.
Yes. Of course, like they said, that they've toned it down a lot now. Before, if you even accidentally stepped foot onto an ancient Orzava burial ground, you could have thousands of dollars worth of debt placed upon you. I'm glad the war happened. A lot of the Orzavan higher-ups got rearranged. And by rearranged, she means almost all of the Orzov governing body was laid to rest, considering they were all ghosts, mostly. Passed on is the best word to use, by an assassin who's the current assistant guildmaster of the Orzava. She was originally going to be the guildmaster, but someone with more experience was put in charge. But then Eileen's leaning in, but we still think Taze is the one that runs it. He's like, you're not supposed to say that.
And hold on, I'm just writing this down. And you said her name is she's
Her,
the assistant of Orizavo.
she's actually no, she's not even the assistant. She's like, well, she says Taze is the one that runs it, but the guild master that's the assistant is Kaya. The person running it is Tomric, and when she leaned over and said Taze still runs it, is the one that we think runs it. Taza Karlov is the only living member of one of the most renowned families of the Orzov, and they seem to think that she runs everything behind the scenes. It's basically what she explains. And he's like, but it's not public knowledge. And Derek's like, you can't. Well, it's not like I can stop you from talking about it, but
And you said that her name is Taser.
Teysa, Teysa, and
Uh,
Karlov, Karlov, or yeah, Lov. She,
gotcha.
and now that y'all have gotten down to the actual waterfront, you are again correct, as the river is very wide, and that humongous church is even bigger now.
The giant, like the perspectives, the or the
The perspective is like the door looks like a giant wouldn't even clear or like bump his head into the door.
no, but like the depth perspective in the size differential is, I'm sure, throwing her off.
Yes, because like it was big from afar. It's much bigger now.
Trying to think of the word they use. It's like when you go to Disney World, right? And this castle looks much bigger than it actually is. It's actually smaller.
Yeah.
Would be the reverse effect, where it looks
Yes.
smaller and it's actually
Yeah.
bigger.
Where things look like, wow, that's pretty big, but then you get closer and you're like, oh, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. Like anxiety big. Like one thing you also notice is the guards for the said church across the street, as perchance, are actually giant people. As in, yes, there are giants guarding the church, wearing full, almost like crusader outfits. You can see them from across the river.
Interesting. They look like giants that I'd have seen before.
Well, they're in full armor, like you know how like a full someone wearing full plate Crusader armor would look.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're wearing. It's form fitting. It's not like it was made for them. It wasn't like cobbled together. It
Gotcha.
fits them, and not only does it fit them, you can see the guild from across the lake.
Gotcha.
And she's like, "Yeah, the giants that the Orzhov imply get their own form-fitting armor. According to the Boros, but it's a little takes a little bit higher of a rank to get that."
Well done, them. Oh, by the way, it's called force perspective.
Forced perspective. Yep.
Or it employs an optical illusion to make an object appear either farther away or closer, larger or smaller than it actually is.
Yeah,
So,
that effect kind of just happens because of just how vast everything would be.
correct. So it's not intentional, but it is a force perspective.
Yeah, for someone who hadn't been there before.
Correct.
And like you said, now that you've gotten down to the river's edge, the buildings you're kind of along the side of are a lot smaller than those giant ass spires from up from the promenade you saw. They're more like only like 7-story buildings. They're not that big.
No, in comparison to the rest of the stuff, no, that's looks like a small structure.
Yes. And there's a new face now that you're down at the waterfront. You're not sure what to call this creature, but again, it's a blue-tinted humanoid that appears to have gills and webbed hands and feet.
Interesting.
Uh, Another thing that you would see would be, uh, what's another interesting one that you would run into once you get down to the waterfront? You would start to see hybrids. Now, among those guild creatures, you notice that one of them has a crab claw for a hand, whereas the rest do not.
Interesting.
And he seems to be holding something with it for the others while they work on it.
Is
And by crab claw for a hand, I mean his whole arm is like a crab, not just his hand. And armored and everything.
is that person okay? I point to the guy with the crab hand.
The Simic are, both of them turn to you and like, the Simic are weird and say at the same time.
Simic.
Oh, they're like, he says, imagine my scientific enthusiasm, but for evolution.
Fascinating.
And she's like, what that means is they like to modify their bodies.
You do it intentionally.
I'm sure that one did. I know that some of them are experiments. Not intentional. I hear it pays good to be a Simic experiment. She's like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
No, I don't imagine I would.
I mean, she's like, you could end up with... Well, I mean, you don't have any tendrils, but you could end up with tendrils like mine. And she flutters her little tendrils. Only they'd probably be out of your back. Or worse, your butt.
Tempting. Very tempting.
He's like, nah. Their current leader is Xanathar. She's the weirdest elf I've ever seen. Her bottom half is that of a jellyfish.
Oh, did you say jellyfish?
Yes, she's mostly jellyfish. Kind of fitting, actually. Did you know that jellyfish are mostly brain? Makes sense to be the lead scientist and be mostly brain.
I unfortunately I did not know that, but it's good to know.
They're kind of they don't really. She's like, they don't really have brains. They're like, their whole body just works as one, or as if they had one. He's like, no, I'm pretty sure that means they're all one brain. Like, kind of like a single cell. She's like, no, 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 they have no brain. So it's weird that she's the leader because jellyfish don't normally have a brain. But it doesn't matter, her head's still an elf, so she has a brain. And they kind of argue about that for a few seconds.
And Mason's just kind of taking this all in, like, what the hell are you arguing about? But she's not saying.
If you ever meet her, you'll know exactly. I mean, we've seen her at the guild summit before. She had to have her own tank.
Comes with a tank.
Well, I mean, her lower half is jellyfish. How do you think she gets around?
That is fair, but like
Of course, it was the fanciest tank you'll ever see. They wouldn't have dare let their guild leader into the guild summit in anything less. Y'all are still walking. Y'all haven't got there yet. The red roof building is, again, as true to the word, a little bit bigger now that you're getting closer to it.
And it's funny because Maislin is generally quiet, so she's staying quiet, but she's kind of
Just like,
absorbed.
wow, ooh.
Yeah, very much so, but without the oohing and ahhing, but like internally oohing and ahhing.
Yeah.
She always tries to keep up a stoic kind of appearance. But there are some things that just kind of really blow her mind, like the Lich or the vampires. Just, you know, there's sometimes that she just even though she's on sensory overload, there's some certain things that just kind of push her up and over the edge, and she's like, "What the hell?"
Hey, oh, at this note, he's like, oh, the building is, we're getting close now. Won't be much longer now. And then he's like, I wonder who they have playing in the lobby today.
They have entertainment.
Yes, like I said, we try to keep this place a tourist attraction for planeswalkers, so we have various talent on display in the lobby to kind of pique their interest. I don't remember who was on schedule to play today.
It's a lot of planewalkers.
Well, we do now. Well, if we did before, it wasn't widely known.
And
Like,
where do they come from? Do they come from my plane?
there's other planes, I hear. He's like, we have quite an index. He's trying to explain of one. I hear that there's this one plane called Tark here. It sounds like a devastatingly painful place to live. It's ruled by evil dragon lords, from what I hear from someone from that, or at least that's what we were given from a planeswalker from that location.
Sounds awful.
It is awful, considering if you don't appease the dragons, you become food.
Where I'm from, generally speaking, that is often the case. Is that and sometimes, regardless of whether you appease them or not, you still become food.
There are only few dragons left here on Ravnica. Most of them are the Hellkite, but they stay towards the Badlands. Um, Niv Mizzet's the only dragon of note you'll need to know about in the city. He is the current guild pack.
In, it's
Say what?
what was the name?
His name is Niv Mizzet. Nivmizzet. And there's a hyphen between the two words.
Name is it?
Yep. He
He's a
was,
dragon.
well, kind of. I mean, he still has his dragonic form, but I would classify him more as an elemental of magic now.
And what guild does he?
He used to be an Izzet, but during the war that happened recently, he became the Guild Pact, and now he's more of like how to explain? If the guilds were to call together to vote on something, he would be the tiebreaker.
Ah, yes. Like an
In
overseer.
reality, he'd be like the Speaker of the House,
Correct. Right.
right? But I'm trying to explain in like
Gotcha.
D&D terms.
I gotcha. So he would be like the lead council member.
Yes, for the most part, he would call the meetings into question and what needs to be voted on. And he
Hmm.
keeps the power in check amongst the guilds now.
She's
Things
she's she's very much paying attention to the politics piece of it because that's kind of she feels that if she's going to survive here, she's got to know how to work this.
she's like, well, there has been a little bit of tension as of late. We haven't seen this sort of tension in such a long time either. He does mention a little bit.
What type of tension is that?
Oh, and then Eileen risen. We've even had it down the Golgari. Some racial tension. Some idiots are going around between the races. I mean, we've always had a little bit. It's natural when there's so many different races in one place. But as of late, it seems to be getting a little worse. He's like, yes, it's quite disturbing. The Azorius keep attempting to pass laws to quell it, but it, for the life of me, some of these laws, well, even as Azorius myself, are concerning.
For all of the different types of people I've seen so far, how does anybody keep track of who to be prejudiced against?
That's the part that baffles me. He's like, we're so diverse, you'd think that it wouldn't matter. But like again, as of late, it's been a little more standoffish. It's only happened in the last 10 years. Oh yes, soon our latest. He's like our latest high-ranking member um, of the Azorius. His name escapes me at this point. I haven't been as up to date with current Azorius politics as I would like to admit. But he'd be kin to maybe the third or fourth in command right now for the Azorius. He's been attempting to dissuade said racial issues.
Well, I do wish him the very best.
Yes. And by the time they get done with that, you've now reached the red building. And he's like, unfortunately, Eileen, this is where I have to part ways. We have to part ways with you. It's like, I know. You can only go in there if you're with the Boros or with the Azorius, or a Planeswalker.
Ah, is it safe?
Oh, it's safe. I mean, it's got Boros guards in there, so as long as you don't start anything, or I for some reason start anything, we should be just fine.
Good to know. Oh, and Eileen coming with me in there.
Say what?
Is Eileen coming with me in there?
Unfortunately, she can remain here until you're done, if that would be okay. She's like, I have some shopping to do while I'm up here. How long does it normally take to get acquainted? And he's like, oh, well, I'd have to go in and check. But normally it doesn't take longer than maybe 3 hours. She's like, oh, that's perfect then. I have shopping to do. I'll come back and check on you. I'll be right out here. And she points to the little, like there's like a stall off to the side that seems to be selling food. And she points
Very.
to it, and it's right there. And she's like,
And
oh, and if after today, because you're taking to the, she's gonna be taken to the bunkhouses, yes? And he's like, yes, she'll be taken to the bunkhouses afterwards for the planeswalkers. And then she's like, well, she hands you her card, which you still can't read. She's like, I know you can't read the script yet, but when you can, just ask for me whenever you're in the down in the my section of the Golgari, and I can see what I can get done for you.
Eileen, I do appreciate your hospitality and everything you've done for me up until this point, including helping me feel better.
No problem, no problem.
Uh, I want you to know, you don't know me, but I want you to know how important this is. I won't forget it.
No problem. Like I said, come and see me sometime.
That basically for Maislin, when she says she won't forget it, like she will like it kind of like her enemies when she etches them in her brain, the people who like really help her and are selfless to her, she etches in her brain.
Yep. Well, Derek's like, okay. Well, Eileen, I'll leave you to your business, and then he walks you up the steps, and it's like I want to say like the Lincoln Monument where it's kind of
Uh-huh.
like that Greek kind of style. That's what this
Uh-huh.
particular building has, kind of a Greekish kind of style to it. But then it
Yes.
has more of a it kind of it's like a combination between Greek and Gothic in terms of its the overall design.
Gotcha.
And whereas the spires would be more Gothic, and the entrance would be like the Greek pillars.
I'm following you.
That this is my own custom building, so that's kind of how it would look. And he
It's
brings you up to there's like a door with two guards, who one appears to be a minotaur and the other one appears to be one of those strange creatures you saw earlier that had the big ears, the tusks, and the long nose.
and like those ones with the long nose and the tusks. I'm just kind of staring at them and
Well,
just kind of
out of character, they're basically elephant people, but you
gotcha.
wouldn't know unless you were traveled a lot, and I mean a lot. When you were back in Waterdeep, you wouldn't really know what an elephant is.
Now,
No.
so that's why I'm saying I'm staring
This
at
is why I have to describe an elephant to someone like.
No. I knew exactly what you were talking about, but I'm saying in character, she's staring at the long nosed tough people.
A lot of planeswalkers have never met a Luxodon. Apparently, they're native only to Ravnica.
Oxidon.
Yeah, they're just the best way to describe them would be very generous, nice people. Very strong though. Don't get on their bad side. I hear that they tend to never forget anything. And then he's talking to the front desk kiosk, and he hands him a pass, and he hands you a small pass. He says, "Keep this with you while you're in the building. If you step through the wrong threshold without it, I can't be. I mean, you may or may not get tackled by Boros guards."
I will be sure to keep this on me.
Good. I would normally suggest it, and he puts it around his neck, like it's basically like a VIP pass almost.
Good. Yeah.
He's like, that's what he said. I would suggest, and he and then they walk up to the door, and then they show the pass to the Luxodon. He's like, right this way, and he reaches down, and opens the door.
Follow what he's doing. I kind of
Yeah,
mimic him.
yeah.
So
And he's like, you too, and he's like, green means you're new here. When you get done and checked out, the pass will change to blue, and like one side of it is green, and he's so you're good. You go on in. You go on in, and it's like 5-star hotel lobby, except at like what would be every exit or entrance to a door, there are two armed guards that are either human, elf. In one corner of the room, there are two like heavily armored goblins that are standing full at attention, and they look like they have just as much importance as the other humans. Um, on the other end of the room, you have a minotaur standing at attention, and these are all wearing red and white, and their armor is silver, and it has like looks like a fist emblazoned on their chest, and
hmm,
and he's like, those are Boros guards I was teaching. They're basically here. They're basically trained. These ones here were some of the best trained sentries because planeswalkers have been known to be quite powerful. And if one causes a disturbance, they're here. And as you're walking through the lobby, uh, you get around to this small room. He's like, "We're going to go upstairs, and there's an actual staircase this time. No lifts." And he leads you up the staircase, and you get up to the next lobby, and it's even more like loungy area. And he's like, "You sit right over here," and he points to the little the couch. And there's like a long couch on the wall, and he's standing off to the side, and like you can notice that the threshold changes from like this dark stained wood to the white marble where the couch is laying. And he hasn't stepped over the threshold to the marble, but he points for you to step over the threshold to the marble towards the couch. And
I recognize this, and I say, "Are you not coming?"
I cannot step over the threshold. And he actually reaches out, and there's a barrier preventing her from stepping over the threshold.
Interesting.
He's like, unless you have a higher grade pass than mine, or badge, Azorius badge, or a planeswalker, you can't pass through the barrier.
Okay, well then I will.
Don't worry, a loon won't bite. Andraste might, but it will only be out of joke.
Don't know who that is either, but okay. I will. So she like does like a little nervous laugh.
She's like, just wait there until your name will be called.
She sits down and kind of looks around at other people that might be in there.
She's like, oh, I almost forgot to mention before you leave. When they scan you, I know that most of your types tend to try to resist it. Don't resist the scan.
I will do my best.
It only makes the process to check you in take longer. Andraste is quite adept at it, but she will. Let's just say that although Andraste is a nice person, it's best not to have her full interest. Unless you like illicit activities. At least that's what I hear on the side.
Illicit activities. What do you mean?
Andraste is a member of the Orzhov, but she has great ties with the Dimir. And Elune is a member of the Azorius and was once a Boros angel, but after the war, she thought that she could do better helping write laws. But she's actually got herself stuck in well, it's not a dead end job, but she's basically the highest position you can have as someone who handles planeswalkers from the planeswalker department of the Azorius.
And Andraste is what? What is her job?
She's her assistant.
Gotcha.
Whereas Elune does the paperwork, Andraste does all the questioning.
Gotcha. Would you suggest that I answer any questions as honestly as possible?
I would say yes, but even if you don't, Andraste is why I said not to resist. She's quite adept at mental magic, so she will know even if you are lying. So
Oh, glad I asked.
yes, that's why I recommend you not to attempt to resist the scan. Just because
Okay.
it'll take longer, and she'll ask you even more questions because you'll look like a shady type. And he's like, judging by your equipment, you appear to be of the sneaking variety. So I thought I would fit to warn you. Don't even add extra questions just because you were reluctant.
I appreciate your um, I appreciate your observancy and your candor.
Well, don't take this the wrong way. I haven't really took my eyes off of you since you've been here.
No, I also was noticing this. So,
Yes.
um, but
I do hope that I get bonus I get bonus credits this time.
bonus credits?
Oh, it's not like working for commission, but the more credits I have, the more I can look into my research on my spare time.
Gotcha. Oh, I will do my best to make sure that you get bonus credits.
Thank you. Oh, yes. He looks at the sign. He says, while you're waiting, it looks like Draximos is playing for us today. I might stay. I'll be across the room, though, because,
Other restrictions, I understand.
yes. And when she says that, when he says that, he walks off, and you notice that this marbled off area has, like, just the one long bench on the wall, and then it looks like glass, but you quickly realize that that's just a magical barrier, kind of to keep you in. But you can hear noises through it. And the current person out there playing is someone playing on the piano, and they look to be like, just an elf playing the piano. There's a few patrons, and there's like a bar off to the left. It's like a little lobby area. Again, they're trying to tourist planeswalkers that even when they're checking them in and have armed guards at the doors, they're trying to be inviting.
Now, are there other people on the couch with me?
At the current moment, no. And I'm kind of debating whether or not I want to get you. No, I think I'll bring you all to the bunkhouse at the same time. So, um, but I will have your check-in visit. Do your check-in visit while you're here. But while you're waiting at the check-in visit, the person playing piano gets done. Someone comes out on the stage, and he says, and thank you to you. Not really paying attention to who this was, but when he says, and next up is Traximos, the cool cat, and then you hear Derek go, yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah, and then everyone applauds. That's in the patrons, and then while you're looking out at the patrons, you notice a bunch of people wearing, like before out there. I mean, aside from the guilds, the different color for guilds and normal people clothing, these people in here seem to all be wearing various different gear and makes of weapons and armor.
Oh,
And I don't know what's the something you would recognize. You recognize that one of the people have a shield on their back, and on said shield is the Waterkeep Town Guard symbol.
oh. And these are the people in the like little
The,
lounge area.
yeah, the little lounge area outside the what you thought was glass, but is actually a barrier.
So these are looking like these are fellow planeswalkers.
Correct, and this is like basically
Like
a place for them to come and hang out.
an airport lounge.
Yeah, for the most part.
Gotcha.
Well, or just like kind of a tavern.
Right.
But as you're waiting and everyone's applauding, who walks out onto the stage with their hooves is the person who was standing there. You assume is a normal person. The person who walks out on the stage is like a 9 foot tall demon in a perfectly pristine purple suit, 2-piece suit. You know, the 3-piece suit with a red tie, and he's a demon. He's got horns and everything. His hair is slicked back. He's got those spectacles like Eileen has on his face. But he's got hooves. He's a demon.
What the hell?
And he has this big case, and he sets it down, opens it up. He brings out this instrument that, from up here, you think it's maybe gold or brass? You can't tell. And he's like, he taps what appears to be a small device or a small magical implement, and you can hear him tapping on it. So apparently it echoes volume. And he's like, "How's it going, cool cats?" And everyone's like, "Woo!" He's like, it's good to be back here. I'm going to play a little for y'all today. And then he picks up his instrument and he plays the smoothest jazz you've ever.
I love it because it's like I feel like Willy Wonka developed a Ravnica. It's
And
so great.
like I said, I'm going to go ahead and have you guys get you checked in with Alun and them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the other characters look like, but they're going to show up into the bench as time. You're going to be the first since you're the first person done with your character.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're waiting, the other people's player characters will show up. I don't know what they look like yet, but you'll be all directed to the same place afterwards because you'll be checked in about the same time.
Right.
And then after listening to him play smooth jazz for about an hour, you get called back. So a gentleman comes out in full armor, salutes, calls out your name, Malaise, Nightblade. Says your full name, by the way. I just want to let you know that the only person you've probably told your name to was Eileen, and then she said her first name to
Yeah.
Derek, but
Yeah,
Derek didn't know your last name. Eileen doesn't know your last name. This man comes out, calls you by your last name, salutes, and directs for you to come in. I just want to let you know that you haven't told anyone your full name, and he gives you your full name.
And that's yeah. So she's definitely like standing back.
He's just pointing this way. The commander will see you now.
Okay.
Just follow the path.
And I start walking, and I turn and I go, "How did you know my name?"
Oh, don't worry. You did well to listen to your friend. Those who resist, it takes longer to process.
Oh, okay. And I start walking.
And you didn't notice, but while you were sitting there, you were scanned.
Ah.
So,
and I start walking. I start following.
He says that. He says you didn't notice. He's like, you didn't notice? Question mark. While you were sitting there, you were scanned. You didn't resist. Good on you. It takes us much longer and much more questions when people tend to resist.
I didn't even know that I was. You're right. Had no idea I was being scanned.
It's probably Draximos. He plays a mean saxophone. You can hear him from back there.
Yes.
And then he stands at attention, and as you went back, he starts calling out the other player characters' names. But but you don't know their names yet till you'll hear them, but kind of out of the back of your mind, you're not really. So you go into the back room, and there's obviously a little line on the ground with arrows for you to follow.
Of course there is.
And it takes you a little ways around. And when you go around, you come to a door, and it says please. It says written in common that you can understand. Please knock.
Interesting. I'm looking and reading the sign and looking kind of around, and
it also says in several different scripts what you assume is the same thing.
Okay, so then I'll look at it and I'll just stop for a second, look at the other scripts, and then do a slow knock.
You knock, you hear the door unlatch, and it opens, but the person's across the room, and she's dressed in a full white garb with, she appears to have blue and black bracelets and a blue and black brooch, but she appears to wear a golden tiara with what appears to be a sun in the middle of it. And she's like, "Oh, dearie, welcome." And this person has heliochromia. She has one blue eye and one red eye. And she smiles at you, and you can see the fangs. And she has her hair done up in a little bun. And she moves aside and directs you to sit down in the chair. And
It's like a vampire fangs.
Yes, she has vampire fangs.
Gotcha. Okay, and I sit down. I'm looking at her.
As you come in, you turn to sit down. Off to the left, to your immediate left, you then notice sitting at a desk about a 9-foot tall woman with red and white angel wings, wearing blue and white armor. Well, she doesn't really have armor on. She has blue and white robes. She has blue and white gauntlets and greaves, and she also appears to have spectacles. And she's going through paperwork, and she's like, "Ah, another one. Today is quite a busy day." She's like, "Oh, Alun, don't kid. You love this stuff." And she's like, "I loved it 30 people ago." She's like, "Oh, you say that every time we have a busy day."
And Mason's kind of like watching them, and then she says, and then she kind of like very slowly chimes in and says, "I'm sorry, I didn't choose to come here."
Ah, so it was your first planeswalk then? She's like,
Um,
"Unfortunately, I'm not a planeswalker." Andraste, she's my name is Andraste. That's before you ask, but she's like, I hear that when you first planeswalk, it's never intentional. It's always some form of severe trauma, like hmm, breathing in poisons from a poisoner's basement.
just kind of look over at her, and then I remember what Derek said, and I'm like,
And
yes,
then Alun is like, "Oh, really? Well, that's quite interesting."
yes. So
Normally,
is
it's something like natural phenomena, falling off a cliff. Hell, one person caught their loved one cheating on them. That was an interesting story.
yes, unfortunately, the gentleman that who owned the said basement was
Oh, it's okay.
rather indisposed.
That's all in the past. Don't worry about him. As
Well,
long as
I'm
you
not.
don't do something like that here, you should be fine. Um, she goes over a few things and rules. She basically gives you all the laws, and then she asks you questions that they already know the answer to, just to see how honest you are. I mean, I could go here and go over like she can go.
Uh,
So she knows name, height. Um, now the scan I did earlier only tells me most recent things for the most part, things that've been on your mind lately or before within the last few months, I'd say. Um, we'd have to ask more in-depth questions, but from what we can tell, you're a hired assassin. Now, again, it's against the law to just go around killing people. Um, even if you're hired to do some, the only time it's even remotely allowed is when you're an executioner or working for the Boros and you're basically a military officer. She's like, so I'd kindly ask you not to go on a rampage or some set of some type while you're here. It would
I
take.
will. I will. I will certainly do my best. I will. I will. My intention is not to kill anybody unless they're trying to kill me.
Very good then. Um, the loon has just been writing this entire time. He's like, now for the next part. She's Loon hands Andraste this little ball.
Oh, by
She,
the way, when I say that my intention is not to kill anybody unless they're trying to kill me, I give Andraste a kind of look, like a sly look, like that like if you have work, ask.
oh, she knows. She's just smiles, all smiles. That's just. But you gathered that that's just her personality. She's all smiles.
But I
And
kind of like
Loon is very serious.
right,
And
but I lock eyes with Andraste and like just kind of give her
she
a look
smiles a
like,
little harder.
yeah, I know you know, and you know I know. We're
And
good.
then she clicks the little button on the ball, and then she goes to drop the ball, and the ball only goes about 2 inches before wings sprout out of it, and it hovers in place like a almost like a snitch
Right.
from a thing, and it zooms over to you. It A little white light comes out and shines over you. It hurts your eyes for a second, and then it flies back to Andraste, and then she hands it to Loon, who has prepared a special piece of paper, and she puts it on the paper, and then she hits the button, and it makes one of those splitting images out of paint that you saw at Eileen's house.
Oh,
And then she puts it in there. She she writes a few more things down. She closes your file, and then she says, Alun looks up, takes her glasses off. She says, "We get this kind of thing every now and then. We do have somewhat of a kind of misfit jobs thing here for adventurers." She quotations when she says that.
jobs?
And yes, jobs. Things need help. Things that you can't hire out to other guilds. That we need people that are not affiliated with to do.
Looks like just the work for me.
Yes. If you want to earn coin while you're here, she's like, again, neither one of me or Andraste are a planeswalker. We can't tell you how to do that. You'll have to ask one of your kind. Um, there's many of them in the lobby. Shh, quiet. And then she then says a few magical words, and she then her eyes glow. She points her hand at you. A little magic circle appears around her hand, and your paths. The one side is green, and the other side is blank. The side that's blank now has your face on it, with a little bit of your information, like your name, and like your race, and your height, your weight. And on the other side, it turns blue. And she says, "That is your temporary citizenship card." She's like, "Keep that with you at all times." She's like, "If you lose it, and you get caught without it, that's at least, oof. And your terms of currency, that'd be at least 200 gold."
Interesting.
Your money will be, if you wish to have your money transferred, you may. Any money that you have on you. Otherwise, your first week at the beds is free. Afterwards, you need to pay. And she says, "Do have fun while you're here." And then Andraste walks over to you and pats you down real quick. And while she's doing, she slips a little card into your pocket. And Alun just looks at Andraste and says, "Nothing too serious. I don't want to have to cover your tracks again." Which means she saw her slip it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Oh, you love covering up my tracks. It means you get to look at me from behind." And then Alun slightly blushes at that remark, but returns to her work. And Andraste gets you up out of your chair, and she directs you to this time, when you go back to the hallway, the arrows will be pointing in a different direction. Yes, it's magic. We use a lot of that here. And just follow it, and wait there. You're part of, what do they call sections? Every 30 people, we corral them into a room, and then give them one final spiel before, well, letting them free. So, you'll be sitting there, and she'll let you go out the door.
Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Pleasure to make yours. I'm sure we'll hear from each other again.
I'm sure.
And then you leave out the door and you follow the door down, and it's another little lobby where you can see the stage. Draximos is still playing. You're like, "Man, that guy can play for quite some time. Does he ever need to breathe?" A little bit more than you are the fact that he's a demon still. And while you're sitting there, this particular lobby, still you can see it has that little barrier, but now there are waiters, and one of them offers you, if you would like anything to drink, or food, drink and food. And if, this is kind of where we're going to end it off at. If you say yes, you'll get some food. If not, you could just sit there and listen to Draximos play.
I think I would. I don't think I would eat because I'm still cautious. Like I ate at.
Even Eileen, the nicest person you met, technically tried to poison you.
Yes. So I'm not going to eat, but I am going to sit back, cross my legs, and just
He's like,
listen
not
to.
even water.
No, thank you.
Okay, good. Let's work for me. And he walks off. And
And
then now on your character sheet, since we're done with session 0 for you, you're going to add 2 to your constitution, your score, for your character. You're going to add in your features and traits, you have resistance to poison.
Right.
You're going to also add, like, I don't know how to put this in on D&D Beyond, but I know on Roll20, you know where you put at the bottom, like when you have a rage, where you check the mark, you would put down there whether or not you've poisoned what you're using. And basically, all you need to do to poison any of your weapons is to lick it. It'll be good for 1 minute.
So let me do this. Hold on.
You need to lick it. If you use your actual blood, the poison is more effective. But licking it will give you, at the current point in time, a D4 extra poison damage, plus your Constitution modifier. So
And then if I do blood,
it'll
what
be a
is it?
D6. Also, if you kiss anyone, you'll accidentally do a D4 poison damage plus your Constitution modifier. Until you learn to control it. But at the moment you... And if you get your blood on anyone, same thing. D6 plus your con mod.
Uh-huh.
At the moment there is no DC save for your poison because the only thing it does is additional damage. It doesn't do any special effects.
Gotcha.
That's your Planeswalker ability. After reading your character and looking at your character sheet, that's what I've just chosen to give you as your character's Planeswalker ability. You have poisons. You are proficient in poisons to the point where you are the poison. Also, when handling poisons, you do not need to roll to see if you use it properly. You just automatically apply poisons as if it's second nature to you. So if you were to say buy a paralyzing potion, poison, that's only good for 1 strike, when you go to use it, you don't need a roll to apply it.
It's an auto success.
Yes. Because normally someone would say, you need to make a dex check so you don't accidentally poison yourself, but in your case, you just go, you can probably drink it and not be affected by it, so.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to add.
So where most people have to be careless, you could probably put in extras if you can't put it anywhere else, because D&D Beyond's a little weird.
Right.
Because extras, I know you could open that up and just write in there.
Yeah, let me do it.
But damage resistant means you take half damage from poisons. You also have advantage on saving against poisons. But only poisons that do damage. Right at this moment, any poisons that have special effects, you still have to roll normally. If a poison just does damage, you have advantage.
Gotcha.
And you can never be treated from the poisoned status effect. And this ability will grow as you grow. So when you level up, aside from maybe putting a point in that Constitution modifier so it becomes an even number, every few levels I'll improve your Planeswalker ability.
Gotcha.
And then when we get finished done with the campaign, you'll be a full-fledged Planeswalker and can Planeswalk once per day.
And then I'm just typing all of this into D&D Beyond.
And I was really hoping you're taking names because Everyone's special characters are going to be everyone's special characters. So, for example, you have connections with the Golgari. You have Eileen, who may or may not be more involved with the Golgari than she let on.
I did. I got the Golgari, and then I've got
Derek is your Azorius representative for the Golgari. He would be your sponsor if someone were to ask. I didn't say that, but
and then I have so Derek would be my sponsor.
he would be your Azorius sponsor if someone asked. But only very few people will ask, and I probably could have just avoided saying that until way later. But I just want to go ahead and get out of the way.
No, that's all right. And then I have Andraste is the Orzhov with Demir ties
Correct.
and assistant, but she's gonna be my little contact in the Demir and the Orzhov.
Yes.
And then let's see. And then there was one other. There was a few others, but there was.
You wrote down some of the politics people that, at this point, you really don't need much about because you're not going to run into many of them early on. So.
It was just there was one where it was, in the Gary. There was, one. Where is it? Oh, the Akron, which are the assassins.
Yes.
But they're part of the Golgari.
That don't technically exist.
Yeah, technically.
But everyone knows they kind of do because Vraska is now the leader, and it was basically a murder cult led by Vraska for the most part. Well, not really a cult, but an organization, an assassin organization led by her. But when she became leader, someone's dirty laundry gets out into the wind pretty easily.
Right. So Vraska's the leader of the Golgari, but she's also part of the Akron.
She would technically also be the leader of the Akron if such an organization existed.
Right. Okay.
And after you get done with everyone else in the beginning of session 1, Eileen is waiting for you outside. And that is your session 0.
Okay. All right.
How did you like it?
It was really good. I'm actually really glad. I was going to research Ravnica before we had this, but because obviously I found out that we were having it tonight, I didn't have time to research the Ravnica piece, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because it allowed me to kind of play in character a little bit better than if I had known what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole reason why I elected to be the one to DM a Ravnica trip.
Because I mean, but I mean, even if I had read a little bit about Ravnica, there might be, things that I unconsciously kind of understood and knew metagaming, and I didn't play it out in character.
Now, I did try to do my best to only give you a mostly Golgari side of what Ravnica's like.
Yep.
Because kind of leaning towards everyone kind of having their own introduction, with a few guilds that everyone's going to know, like the Azorius, the Boros, the Orzhov, because those are going to be the 3 main ones that everyone's going to know. But then the rest of them are going to kind of be how other people make their character, how I'm going to introduce them to the game. So everyone's going to kind of have a different contact from the various guilds.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I was doing my best to keep it story driven.
You did great.
Yeah, I knew someone was gonna have a Gorgon as their first person to meet, and I was like, oh man, I saw that you had like Drow assassins in your backstory, and I was like, man, they like poison. I could just drop you right at a Golgari, someone right as a Golgari at a Gorgon's door, and just have fun with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was perfect, and it fit perfectly into my backstory. So it was just it's ideal.
And it fit real perfect because the best person to end up with is the Golgari have like one of the short stories of the Golgari. There's this mushroom that if you eat it, the mushroom like takes over your brain and causes you to climb to the highest surface possible, and then you just kind of become a mushroom. It's one of those gruesome side effect poison things you never want to touch. There's also this one mushroom that if it like explodes or if it gets messed with and the spores get released, it can drop you in like an instant. So I was like, Goldberry is the best place to start you out at because you're poisoner.
And plus, now that I have Eileen as a contact, I think what I would do is, make her my little confidant and just kind of, but also see if I can tap her for information on all of these different, fungi and natural ingredients and elements that I might not know of that might help me kind of create these like various poisons.
Yes, and eventually you'll get to the point where I'll be able to let you basically consume a certain amount of poison, and then you can regurgitate it at will.
Ooh.
That's kind of my end goal for your character because every planeswalker has a planeswalker ability. For example,
Mhm.
Ralzeric can harness lightning storms.
Ah.
Um, you know, Chandra fire comes to Chandra as quickly as snapping her fingers. Like every planeswalker has something that they're super proficient with. So for you, May poisons. Everyone else is going to be different.
Huh. Okay. I like it though.
Yep, yep. All right,
Cool.
this is a 3 hour and almost 6 minute recording, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop it here.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem.